In a seemingly perfect marriage, John's world shatters when he stumbles upon a shocking video revealing his wife Jenny's affair during a weekend getaway. As the truth unfolds, John's heartbreak transforms into a burning rage, driving him to confront Jenny in a dramatic showdown. The once loving husband turns cold and vengeful, forcing Jenny to leave their home and threatening to expose her darkest secret. Jenny's guilt consumes her as she spirals into despair, but John's anger only deepens. Torn between love and betrayal, John embarks on a journey of inner turmoil, where forgiveness seems impossible and the lines between right and wrong blur. In this tale of love, deceit, and redemption, no one escapes unscathed. Many times I've heard people say that life can change in a moment. We live on such a thin line that even a small thing can make everything go wrong. I was 27 and living a normal life when I met Kathy. She was a few years older than me and had more excitement in her past. She was a pretty blonde with a fun personality. What I liked most about her was her sense of humor. It was playful but had a bit of sharpness too. We quickly became good friends and spent many months together. We supported each other through one failed relationship after another. Eventually, we decided it was time to really look out for each other. After 3 dates, we took a step forward in our relationship. We kept dating for a little over a month, but we both realized we were not the right match. It wasn't a bad ending, just a parting of ways. 2 weeks later, she called and asked me to come over. When I arrived at her door, she welcomed me with a bit of nervousness. "Can you please sit down, John? We need to talk." I thought she wanted to give our relationship another try because I still cared for her. I was ready to take things slowly this time. But then she said something that shocked me. "I'm pregnant." My whole world turned upside down. "But you told me you couldn't get pregnant," I replied, confused. We weren't using protection because we both thought it wasn't necessary. She had a health issue that was supposed to prevent pregnancy. Her doctor had told her she couldn't get pregnant, even with treatment. "I know what my doctor said, but I am pregnant. There's no one else involved. It's yours. What should we do?" Her thoughts were racing. I wondered if perhaps she might consider ending the pregnancy so I could avoid responsibility. Instantly, I felt guilty. I had always dreamed of having kids, and I could never ask her to do something like that. Luckily, she felt the same way. We spent weeks talking about our options. In the end, we decided to do everything we could to make our relationship better. We spent months in couples counseling, and I moved in with her to support and take care of her. Around babies before, so everything was new to me. Babies depend on you for everything: food, safety, comfort, and love. Danielle looked at me as if I were her whole world. Love isn't something you plan. It just happens. The connection we had was stronger than I ever thought possible. Sadly, her mother and I weren't as lucky. It became clear that our choice to separate was the right one. We just weren't meant to be together. Two stubborn people were very unhappy with each other. After helping her care for Danielle for 6 months, she asked me to move out, and I felt relieved. I was sad to leave my little girl behind. I would miss putting her to bed and kissing her on the head at night. But she was right. It was time to go. Things were tense, but we managed to get along until we had to go to court. Once the lawyers got involved, we went from not liking each other to really hating each other. It didn't happen quickly, but it did happen in a surprisingly short time. I'm not sure if it was the stress of not being in control or needing to work through other people, but neither of us felt like we were winning. We argued, threatened each other, and worried about what the other person would do next. Sometimes I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't agree with many of the choices she made, from when our daughter was in kindergarten to her nights out. We even used our little girl against each other, which still hurts me deeply. For 3 years, I lived waiting week by week for my time with Danny. I wanted to give her everything she could dream of. I tried not to spoil her too much, but I wanted to see the world through her eyes. Honestly, I was also a bit scared that she wouldn't remember our times together the same way she remembered her mother. One tough part of being a single dad is feeling jealous of the other parent. When Danny turned 4, I met Jenny by chance. I had a small business that helped plan private parties. We organized events, arranged entertainment, and handled catering. It wasn't a path to riches, but I found it enjoyable and fulfilling. I was helping a friend named Kathy with a corporate dinner party. At the party, she introduced me to her daughter Jenny, who had just arrived from New York. Jenny was 25 and had been a dancer for almost 10 years. Sadly, she told me that she had to stop because of some injuries, which led to several knee surgeries. This made it hard for her to continue her dance career. She was visiting her mom while she figured out what to do next. I found that we had a lot in common. Talking to her felt easy, like I had known her forever. Although I thought she was very charming, I also believed that it was best not to get too close to the daughters of my clients. So I just made small talk. I usually felt a bit nervous around women I really liked, but knowing that nothing could happen helped me relax. We talked for more than an hour, and I was truly captivated. When the evening ended, I felt a wave of sadness when I had to leave alone. 2 days later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number and hoped it was a new client. "Hello?" I answered politely. "Hi, this is Jenny. I was wondering if you were busy today. I don't know anyone here, but I'd like to see the town. Would you mind showing me around?" I tried to sound relaxed, but I was feeling butterflies in my stomach. "Sure, I'd love to." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Surprise me." That was a bold choice for someone I just met. I couldn't help but smile. After I hung up, I started thinking about what to plan. Working in entertainment, I had made some great friends around the city. I called a few people and put together what I thought would be a fun day. When I got to her mom's house to pick her up, I was amazed. She looked stunning at the party, but dressed up to go out, she looked even more beautiful. She truly looked like an angel. She had long, curly black hair, brown eyes, and lovely lips that curved into a slight smile. She also had little freckles on her cheeks. I wasn't saying she had to be a model, but she was just as pretty as the girls from the neighborhood. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever gone out with. We visited the art museum and then watched a ballet. I think she found it funny. I didn't know much about art or ballet, so she spent most of the time teaching me. I wasn't sure if her teaching fascinated me or annoyed me, but she seemed to really enjoy sharing her love for culture. The ballet was especially amazing. She watched everything with great focus, her eyes shining with excitement. I imagined how much she must have wanted to be part of the dancers. I could see her reacting deeply to the performance, and it made me think about how hard it must be to be good at something but have to let go of it. I felt this strong wish to give her a hug. It wasn't planned, just a way to comfort her. I took her hand instead. After the show, we went out for dinner. It was at a restaurant I usually couldn't afford. Luckily, I had learned how to trade favors, and I was pretty good at it. All I had to do was promise to help the manager with something, and suddenly, dinner was much cheaper. During the meal, I found out that she was even more fun to talk to than I had first thought. She was smart, quick-witted, and had a great sense of humor. Our chats easily flowed from politics to her favorite game shows. When I talked about my daughter, she listened closely and asked lots of questions. I was impressed because most people just nod along without really caring. We wrapped up the night by sharing a sweet kiss in the front seat of my car, just like young people do. She had the softest lips I had ever kissed. I tried to keep everything calm because I didn't want her to think it was only about attraction for me. When we finally said goodnight, I drove home thinking about how I could impress her next time. But I soon realized there was no need. Jenny enjoyed going out for pizza and listening to music just as much as she liked being around wealthy people. I felt a sense of relief because that fancy lifestyle did not appeal to me. I prefer hamburgers. Steak and lobster are nice, but pretending to be someone you're not isn't a good start to a relationship. After a few weeks and several dates, we went out for dinner and dancing. I had been nervous about this since our first date. I'm not a great dancer, and I was worried she might see me on the dance floor and think less of me. But that worry vanished quickly. She moved so gracefully that I didn't feel silly at all. We spun around the dance floor like we had done it many times before. I could tell that most of the men in the bar were envious of me. Jenny looked incredible, and her dancing was stunning. I have always been drawn to women with talent like musicians, artists, and especially dancers. There is a grace in how they move that goes beyond just being attractive. As the night went on, I found almost as much joy in watching Jenny dance as in dancing with her. I felt a strange twist in my stomach and realized I was falling for her faster than I expected. Afterward, we drove to my house. From that night on, we began dating seriously. A few weeks later, I was nervous about introducing my daughter to Jenny. As much as I liked Jenny, I knew there wouldn't be a future for us if she and my daughter didn't get along. My daughter meant everything to me, and I was open about that. Luckily, it didn't turn into a problem. It took about 5 minutes to see how well they got along. Jenny liked to touch Danielle's hair as they chatted. I could tell my daughter really enjoyed Jenny's gentle touch and how she read to her, like she had done it many times before. Before the night ended, Jenny even showed Danielle a few dance moves like a ballerina. It was truly amazing. I felt sure that Jenny liked me already, and I felt the same way about her. The way she interacted with Danielle made me like her even more. When the night came to a close, she said goodbye and hugged both of us. Afterward, I took Danny upstairs to get her ready for bed. After I finished reading her a bedtime story, she had a serious look on her face. "Daddy, are you going to marry Jenny?" she asked. I smiled and said, "I hope so, honey." "Good," she replied excitedly. "Life can be wonderful." Next chapter. 4 months went by when I got a phone call. It was Kathy, and I could tell she had been crying. She said simply, "We need to talk." I didn't like how she sounded, and I hurried out of my house without asking if we should talk right away. When I reached her home, she told me she wasn't feeling well. She had been to the doctor, and the test results would arrive in the morning. It turned out to be pituitary cancer. It was in the advanced stage. There was no cure. I was at a loss for words. Over the last year, our relationship had gotten a little better. We argued less and stopped questioning each other all the time. Once we did that, the anger from our past began to fade. It was easier for me to let go of my bad feelings, but now I was hit with the reality that my daughter would lose her mother. "I don't know what to say," I stammered. "I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?" "Yes," she said. "You need to take Danielle now. I knew I would be too ill to care for her soon, and she needed to get used to having you around all the time. She was all I would leave behind, and I wanted her to be happy." I just nodded, and tears filled my eyes. 3 months later, she was gone. Danielle was heartbroken. She didn't understand why it happened, and I couldn't explain it to her. It took months before she started to feel like herself again. I felt so helpless. Jenny understood how Danielle felt and spent as much time with her as she could. They became very close, and I could see that their friendship helped ease my daughter's sadness. I don't know how I would have gotten through that time without Jenny's help. I waited 6 months to ask Jenny to marry me because I wanted to respect my daughter's feelings. I was worried Danielle might think I was trying to take her mom's place. When I finally felt it was the right moment, I asked Danielle for her blessing first to make sure everything would be okay. She seemed very happy and was looking forward to some good news. The first thing I needed to do was buy a ring. I know that today, it's common for men to let women choose their own rings, but I'm not like that. I wanted to surprise her with a ring that I hoped she would love. Early in our relationship, I found out that Jenny loved yellow roses. She adored them. For months, I surprised her with bouquets, little ornaments, and even a painting done by a friend. Amazingly, she always appreciated these gifts. It turned into a fun challenge for me to find new ideas that would delight her. So I asked an artist I had worked with before to create something unique that we would both enjoy. I also had the contact of a jeweler who owned his own shop. I remembered helping him out a few years back when he got married. I stepped in at the last moment to fix a problem caused by another company. He was very grateful and promised to do his best to help me find the perfect ring. After explaining my choices, he agreed to lower the price so I could afford it. He hurt me for favors later, but it all worked out in the end. Next, I needed to come up with a plan. I thought about asking in public, but I couldn't figure out how to do it right, so I decided it would be better to do it in private. I wanted to include Danielle in some way. I had read that kids can feel upset when their parents get married again because they don't have a say in what happens, and they might not like the new partner. I thought it would be a good idea to ask her to help because I believed Jenny would enjoy it and feel more included. She was really excited to be part of the plan. I invited Jenny to a concert by a pianist who was touring the country. He was in town for just one night, and I got great seats. It was a wonderful experience for both of us. When we got home, we found a nice dinner waiting for us. It was a lovely meal with smoked salmon from Jenny's favorite seafood place and many tasty side dishes made by a local chef. Jenny looked very happy with everything. We ate together and chatted until we couldn't eat anymore. I stepped away for a moment and went upstairs, where I found Danielle with Tammy, the neighbor's daughter. Tammy sometimes helped me take care of Danielle. I told her it was time for Danny to help me, and she could go home now. Tammy smiled and wished me good luck. I took a very excited Danielle back downstairs to the dining room. Jenny jumped up and hugged her, telling her all about our special night. I gave her a small distraction and winked at Danny. She then pulled out a little box from her pocket. "Jenny," she said shyly, "Daddy and I wanted you to have this." I felt so proud. She said it just right, just like we had practiced. Jenny's hands shook a little as she took the box from Danielle's hands. She opened the box and showed me a ring that a guy like me should not have been able to buy. It was a shiny silver ring with a delicate design and a band that led down to a lovely yellow rose with the biggest diamond I could afford on top. I took it out and gently placed it on her finger. "Jenny, will you marry me?" I asked. She shouted, "Yes!" and hugged me tightly. Daniel, her little boy, grabbed onto her leg, not wanting her to leave him. I felt so happy that everything had gone just as I planned. I was even more glad that I thought to set up a camera on the fridge to record this special moment. Next, we went on our wonderful honeymoon. Jenny's mom took care of Danny for a whole week while we flew to New York. She introduced me to all her old friends and made me feel very special. We stayed in a nice hotel. By the end of the week, I was excited to go home and get some rest. When we returned home, we quickly fell back into our usual routines. Jenny got a job as a secretary at a construction company. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid well and gave her time to be with me and Danny. Things were good for us, and we didn't have to work hard at it. We liked many of the same things, so we rarely had to convince each other to do something. We had special dates where we could both try something new. The rule was that the one who planned the date got to choose what we did, and the other person had to go along with it and not complain. If one of us didn't like what we didn't have to do it again. But you couldn't say no without giving it a try first. Her dates were always exciting. She knew how to make things fun, even when they were unexpected. I'm not sure how much she enjoyed my choices, but she always seemed engaged and made me feel like it mattered to her. As a guy, I probably didn't see how much she really influenced things. It was a bit strange for me, but I think it meant more to her. She may have worried that we were growing apart, but she never talked to me about it. When we tried to discuss it, nothing seemed to work. We both wanted to fix things, but something always got in our way. A few weeks before our anniversary, she got a call from her friend Megan. Megan was one of Jenny's friends from New York, and I had met her during our honeymoon. After our first anniversary, Megan moved to the city, and their friendship picked right back up. I never really liked her because it felt like I wasn't included when they hung out. It wasn't bad enough that I would complain to Jenny, but we just didn't connect. I thought it was a good chance for Jenny to enjoy a piece of her old life. She could spend time with Megan, and that gave me time to focus on my own interests. I also appreciated the time I could spend alone with Danielle. She was very close to her stepmother, so I was happy to have a chance to be alone with her. One of Megan's oldest friends was getting married in New Orleans. Since she didn't have a boyfriend to bring along, she asked Jenny to go with her. I was fine with it, and they planned their trip, leaving late Thursday night and coming back late Sunday night. Once they left, I felt surprised at how empty the bed was for the first time in 2 years. Jenny didn't call me all weekend, which was strange for her. I wasn't too worried, though, because I knew Sunday afternoon would be busy with a rehearsal dinner, a bachelorette party, and then the wedding. There was also a lot of shopping planned for all the women who hadn't seen each other in years. I thought about calling her just to say hi, but I didn't want to bother her. It hit me that the 3 days without her had affected me a lot. I really missed her. Even though we had some troubles in the past few months, I had been with Jenny for 3 years. By Sunday morning, I was really excited to see her again. I wanted to make things better right away. I wasn't too worried about our breakup, but I could tell it was bothering her a lot. I promised myself that helping her feel better was my top goal. I cared about Jenny more than anything and just wanted her to be happy. Early on Sunday, I got a message from her saying she would take an earlier flight home instead of arriving around midnight. She would be back by 7. I couldn't talk to her because she called when Danny and I were out. We wanted to surprise her. We decorated the whole living room and got a cake. I left Danny with the babysitter and went to the airport to pick her up. Jen called me on my cell and said she would wait for me at one of the terminals. When I finally saw her at the entrance, I had to look twice. She looked really sad. Her hair was messy and she seemed tired. Her eyes were red and puffy like she had been crying. I stopped the car and got out quickly, feeling worried. Without saying anything, she ran to me and wrapped her arms around me tightly, starting to cry again. I gently pushed her back so I could see her face. "Jenny? What happened?" She looked down for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Megan and I had a big fight. I came back by myself. The whole weekend was a mess." I saw her try to stop crying as she shrugged. I knew we needed to leave before I got a ticket, so I helped her to the car. I put her bags in the back seat and drove onto the highway. She leaned against me and I could still feel her crying softly on my shoulder. I arrived at the fast food restaurant and parked the car. I turned to her and asked, "Do you want to talk about what happened?" "No, I don't want to talk about it. Can we just go home?" She seemed upset, and I wanted to help, but I didn't want to force her to say more if she wasn't ready. "Well, we can go home if you want, but remember, Danny is waiting for us with a surprise for you. If you show up like this, he might be really disappointed. We've been planning it all day just for you." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. Then she wrapped her arms around my neck and held me close. "Can we just sit here for a moment? I've missed you a lot. I promise I'll get myself together and we can leave. I just need you to hold me. I love you more than anything." She softly kissed my cheek and rested her head on my shoulder again. I felt sad that her holiday was not going well, but I admired how she was starting to feel better. We got home and she was really surprised by the work Danny and I had done. We all spent the rest of the night cuddling and chatting. It was relaxed, but we were so happy to have her back that nothing else mattered. After we put Danielle to bed, I wanted to help Jenny feel better, but she was too tired. She went straight to bed and asked me to hold her. The fight with Megan must have been really tough on her. As she fell asleep in my arms, I felt like I had made a mistake in my plans to fix our problems. But things changed for the better. Jenny felt sad for a whole week, but she came back happy the following weekend. That seemed to be the end of our troubles. For the next 6 months, everything went well, and she was a wonderful partner. I tried hard to show her how much I cared for her. We put our past issues behind us and found our rhythm in life again. Next chapter. Now you may be thinking everything is great, but how did you get to this place? Well, it's simple. I sometimes have strange interests. Don't get me wrong, I'm not into anything gross. I don't like looking at sick pictures. It's just that, even though I have a wonderful wife who makes me happy, I enjoy looking at some websites once in a while. I see it as harmless. I'd rather look at a pretty girl now and then than imagine someone I know. Those thoughts felt like they could hurt my marriage. One Friday night, about 6 months after our second anniversary, Jenny took Danny to a movie. While they were gone, I played around on my computer. I checked my email and saw a new message. It just said, "Best video from the party." At first I thought it was junk mail, but the address was from a Hotmail account, so I opened the message. Instead of a link or an ad, it said, "John, I know you like this kind of thing. You won't believe this." I saw the URL and felt confused. Who would send me a message like that? They knew what websites I usually visited, but I had no clue who owned that link. I thought I should take a look. A website opened up that showed videos of women. There were 3 sample videos. I downloaded the first one and it was pretty normal. Then I tried the next video. I waited for about 5 to 10 seconds and then the video started. It was about 45 seconds long. Around the 20-second mark, I noticed a good-looking guy who seemed to be a student. He was having fun with a stunning brunette and another woman. I was shocked when I recognized one of them. It was Megan, Jenny's friend. She looked gorgeous with her long blonde hair. I couldn't see much more because the other woman was in the way. I muttered to myself, unsure of how to feel. Although Megan was beautiful, she was still one of Jenny's friends. Seeing her like this could lead to awkward situations. Suddenly, the cameraman came up to the group, and everything around me felt like it was falling apart. "Jenny!" I shouted, feeling dizzy. "Life can be so cruel. I never thought I could feel so many feelings all at once. I was angry, jealous, heartbroken, and a mix of many other emotions I couldn't even name. I needed to know more, so I clicked on the link again. It opened to the same thing I'd seen before. When the person filming moved aside, I saw my wife with shaky hands. I took out my credit card and signed up for a 30-day trial. It took a moment, but I found the full video. I recognized the room from the short clip. Watching it made me feel very uncomfortable. When the video stopped, I looked to see if there were other videos from that night and tried to collect my thoughts. I checked the file. It showed the date, 10/2304. I looked at my computer calendar and confirmed it was the weekend when Jenny was going to New Orleans. I sat still for about 15 minutes, staring at the screen. I had never felt so lost before. I heard a car pull into the driveway and quickly got up to see who it was. It was the girls. When I saw Jenny get out of the car, laughing and not noticing anything wrong, it hit me hard. My anger turned into sadness, and I felt my body shaking with energy. I hurried back to the computer and restarted the video. I fast-forwarded to the part I needed and found the moment I was looking for. I paused the video and went into the living room. They came in, still laughing. Danielle ran up to me and jumped into my arms. I hugged her tightly, knowing I was about to tell her something that would hurt her. She must have sensed something was wrong because she quickly asked me what happened. I couldn't look at her as I said firmly, "Please go upstairs to your room and close the door." She looked upset, but did as I asked. Jenny seemed very troubled. She probably thought someone had died in the family or something. I didn't say anything but went back into the study. She followed me, asking loudly, "John, are you going to tell me what's going on?" When we reached the computer, I held her by the shoulders and turned her to face the screen. I didn't enjoy seeing the color leave her face as she looked at the picture on the screen. For a moment, she didn't respond. I noticed her shoulders shake a little before I heard her start to cry. She spoke softly without turning around. "John, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I struggled to keep my growing anger in check. It was just a one-time thing. I already knew the answer. She stared down at the floor. "No, it happened the night before. And then again at the party with Megan and the dancer." She nodded, still looking at her feet. "What about the next day? Whose bed did you sleep in after the party?" I was just guessing, but I was sure I was right. She didn't respond, just cried harder. "This is just great. I let you into my home. I told my daughter she could trust you. And now here we are." I pointed at the screen in anger. Was this a good choice? Was it really worth tearing our family apart? She cried even more, but still wouldn't look at me. But that didn't matter. I was so angry, and I didn't feel like being sorry for her. So this is how it's going to be. "You useless person. You have 5 minutes to take your things and leave my house." "When? Time is up. If you don't walk out that door, I will send this video to your family, your friends, and your workplace. Once you leave, there will be no more contact between us. Our lawyers will take care of everything." I saw her flinch at my words as if they hurt. Through her sobs, I heard her say, "What about Danielle?" That really set me off. "Don't you ever say my daughter's name again," I yelled. "When you leave, I will tell her the truth about you. You really do not treat others well. You picked your party friends over us. Don't ever hurt her again, or I will have to take legal action against you." She then looked at me, her face full of sadness. "You can't do that. She's like a daughter to me. I helped raise her. I was already thinking about it. But since we never finished the adoption papers, you don't have any rights. I knew I was speaking too loudly, but I couldn't help it. Please don't put me in this situation. Please don't do this to us. I'm asking you to let me explain. It's been 6 months, and I have tried hard to make things right with you." I was finally reaching a point where I could stop being so angry and began to feel calmer, slowly getting hold of my emotions. "So now that you've been dishonest with me for 6 months, I'm just supposed to let it go? How could I know how often you lied? Why would I trust someone who lies? Even if I did trust you, it doesn't matter. You made your choice." I started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Please, John, I'm really sorry. I'll do anything to have another chance. Please don't do this." 5, 6, 7. I felt like she wasn't taking me seriously, so I sat down at the computer and logged into my email. I wrote a message to her parents and her sister, then typed in the box, "The truth about your daughter." Then I clicked send, without looking back as I kept counting. 8, 9, 10. With a frustrated shout, she ran out of the room and dashed upstairs. I paused for a moment, trying to stay calm, then followed her. I stopped at the top of the stairs, a little ways away, and listened as she hurriedly packed her things. I checked my watch and saw I had about 3 minutes left. Then I heard something that made my heart race. "Jenny, Where are you going?" Danielle came out of her room and saw her stepmother in a panic, packing and crying loudly. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I have to go to Aunt Nicole's house for a little while. I did something really wrong and hurt your dad." "It's all my fault, not his," she continued, her voice shaky. Danielle felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She listened carefully as her stepmother spoke. "I thought I couldn't feel more pain," she said, wiping her tears. Danny said through her own tears, "Did you say you were sorry? If you say you're sorry, he might forgive you. Please don't go." All of Danielle's anger vanished. She sank to the floor and cried openly, forgetting all about the time. Jenny spoke again. "It's too late. I'm sorry, but sometimes adults do things that are so wrong that just saying sorry isn't enough." But Danny wouldn't give up. "But I don't want you to leave. Don't you love me anymore?" For a moment, Jenny stopped packing and wiped her tears away, focusing on Danielle instead. "I love you more than anything in the world. I love you so much." She opened her arms wide. "But I have to go now. Be brave, okay? Maybe one day your dad will forgive me. Just remember, this is my fault, not his. He loves you more than anything. I wish I could explain everything, but I need to leave." Feeling overwhelmed, I stumbled to the bottom of the stairs and shouted, 441, 4243. I heard someone talking quickly. Then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Jenny walked past me, then stopped and turned around. "John, I don't blame you for this. I know I deserved it. I'm really sorry I hurt you. I will love you always." She turned and hurried out the door. When it shut behind her, I climbed the stairs to comfort my little girl. I couldn't focus on my own pain. I knew my actions had hurt her deeply. Being mad at Jenny didn't help me feel better. I rushed up the stairs, trying to fix what was lost. Life felt like it was spinning out of control. "Hey, John. Oh no. What happened to you?" The next day, I went to my best friend's house. Luckily, Steve and Sharon were there. I was feeling really worn out and didn't even think about them not being home. I just put Danielle in the car and drove off. Steve clearly saw I was stressed. I gave him a warning look and glanced at Danny. Even though he looked confused, he understood what I meant. He knelt down in front of her and said, "How are you, young lady?" She ran into his arms, crying. "Jenny's gone," she said. Steve looked at me, surprised. He started to say something, but I quickly shook my head to stop him. When Danielle calmed down a little, Steve suggested she go upstairs to see Tyler. Tyler was Steve's son and a bit younger than Danielle. They had been close friends since her mom passed away. I tried to say something, but this time he gently pushed me away and walked out of the room. A few moments later, he came back with Sharon, who looked really worried. We sat down facing each other, and she spoke first. "John, you look awful. What's wrong?" I took a deep breath. "Jenny's gone. I told her to leave last night." "What?" they both said, surprised. I had planned out how to explain everything, but now I couldn't remember what I wanted to say. "She was unfaithful to me. I found out last night." I put my head down on my hands, trying to calm myself. It was a tough fight to stay composed. After a bit, Sharon managed to ask, "Are you sure? I can't believe this. I thought she loved you and Danny more than anything." I thought about telling them everything, but I worried it would hurt too much. Plus, it would be really awkward for them since they had been friends with Jenny since we started going out. Even though I was angry, I didn't expect them to dislike her too. So I decided to keep it vague. I don't want to get into details, but yes, there were pictures, and she even said so herself. I'm not sure if it was really an affair or not. It happened about 6 months ago, and there might have been other times too. I can't believe she would do something that serious without a reason. It seems more likely that it had been happening for a while. Just then, the phone rang, ending our talk. Sharon picked it up and started talking. Steve asked me a few quiet questions, but didn't want to say anything important without Sharon there. She took the phone into the kitchen so I couldn't hear what she was saying. When she returned, she was wearing her coat. It was Nicole calling. She said Jenny is feeling very low and needs my help. "John, do you mind if I go?" Nicole sounded really upset, and I thought I should try to help if I could. I wasn't sure how much I could do, so I just shrugged. She looked at me seriously. "I care about both of you and want to help if I can. Is there anything you want me to say about you or Danielle?" I looked at her firmly. I can't control what you and Steve do or say to her. That's not my concern. But I want to be clear that she is not welcome in our lives. Anything I say to both of you stays between us. If it makes you uncomfortable, just let me know." They both stared at me, surprised. I don't think they understand how serious this is or how resolved I am. It was tough to hold back the truth, but I figured they'd prefer not to know. Sharon kissed Steve and left for a few hours. We didn't talk about anything serious since the kids were busy playing. We watched a basketball game. It felt like a simple moment, but I thought it could mean so much more. Around 7 o'clock, Sharon came back. Without wasting any time, she told me that I was in trouble. "John, please tell me that's not true." Steve looked confused. "Honey, what's wrong?" Sharon kept her gaze locked on me. "John, what was I supposed to do?" Sharon said she was sorry for not being strong enough to make her happy. I said it in a sarcastic way and knew right away it was a mistake. "That's enough, John," Steve said in a loud voice. "You need to calm down." He turned to Sharon and asked, "Sweetheart, what happened?" It was really bad. Jenny was very upset. She told Steve that John didn't just ask her to leave. He also said he wouldn't talk to her anymore and would get a legal order to keep her away from Danielle. Then he gave her 5 minutes to pack her things and go, or he would share her personal pictures with her family and work. She looked at me again and said that I was just sitting there counting out loud, even when she had to say goodbye to Danny. "John, I will believe you if you say you didn't do that. You've never lied to me." "Is this some kind of mix-up?" she asked, stopping to look at me. I hoped it was. Steve stayed quiet as I tried to explain myself. I didn't want her in my house anymore. She is risky and shouldn't be around my daughter. I'm not sure what I could have done differently. Sharon looked unsure. Clearly, Jenny hadn't shared everything with her. "I don't know what's wrong, but you haven't seen her. She is heartbroken. We had to ask her doctor for some medicine to help her sleep. John, she cares about you and feels terrible for what she did. I know you're upset, but why did you have to be so harsh? We've known each other for a long time. This is not like you." Suddenly, I felt more weary than angry. Honestly, I don't know what the right answer is anymore. Sharon, I'm sorry for my outburst. I didn't mean it. I'm just worn out. We should head out. I really appreciate you all for being patient with me today. I know Danny felt better being here. I called Danielle and we left as soon as I opened the door. Sharon stopped me and gave me a warm hug. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, "I'm not sure what to make of your actions, but I hope you change your mind." She looked down at Danielle. I walked away feeling foolish. I should have known Sharon wouldn't like how I reacted to Jenny, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I thought that if I shared everything, it might help. For the next few days, I stayed with Danielle, just trying to get through it. I couldn't eat or sleep. The only thing that kept me going was knowing I needed to support her. She was so hurt. I couldn't see how things would get better. I had a few tense talks with Jenny's family, but they were surprisingly calm. No one agreed with what I did, but they didn't want to completely support her either. A week later, Steve stopped by to check on me and gave me the number of a counselor he really liked. I told him I wasn't interested, but he insisted I should at least make the call. I understood that he was just trying to help, and I promised to think about it. The more I thought about his suggestion, the more it made sense. At that moment, I couldn't see a bright future for my daughter, so I decided to give it a chance at least once. I got an appointment for Thursday. I dropped off Danny at Steve's place and then hit the road. I followed Steve's directions and drove to an office park that was a bit away from the main road. There were many small offices there, each with different kinds of businesses. I checked the address again and couldn't believe what I found. Steve had played a trick on me. The name on the office was a church. I decided to go in anyway because things couldn't get any worse. As I entered, I noticed that it seemed to be a small, low-budget organization. It felt like the kind of space you could make into an office if you had some spare time. A man in his 30s walked into the room, smiled, and reached out his hand. "You must be John," he said. "I'm Brian. Steve has shared a lot about you. I hope I can help you in some way." I looked at him closely, trying to find any hint of what he was thinking. I didn't have anything against religion, but I wasn't looking to change my beliefs either. I went to church when I was younger, but I stopped after college. I couldn't remember why. I knew that Steve and Sharon went to church often, but they only occasionally asked if Danny and I wanted to join them. If Brian was the person Steve thinks so highly of, then it might be good to listen to him. He welcomed me into his office and we had a conversation. He originally worked as a counselor but decided to leave that job. He felt that many of his co-workers focused too much on helping people feel good about themselves. Brian used his religious background to change the way he approached counseling. He got a job as a youth minister at a church because it let him work with kids and help people in need. Now he saw himself as a counselor who had good reasons for what he thought. I knew he was someone worth talking to when he said that many people just needed a little push to get their lives in order. It didn't sound like the usual talk that I worried about, but it also didn't feel like some smooth speech. It was honest, clear, and very engaging. I thought maybe this was a good idea after all. After we talked about what he thought I could gain from meeting him, he asked for my thoughts. I didn't have any ideas, but I promised to keep an open mind. I just wanted to sort out what had happened with Jenny so I could stay calm and not make things harder for Danielle. He listened carefully to everything I shared. When I tried to talk about what I had seen at the party, he kindly stopped me. He wanted to learn about me before I met her, asking about our dates and what I thought of our life together. I shared some easygoing stories about our life, and he didn't seem shocked or surprised. After talking for an hour about the good things, I felt a lot better. Brian told me he had to go to church for work, but he would like to meet with me again if that was okay. He reminded me that this wasn't real therapy, and that I shouldn't think of his advice as more than a chat with a priest or a rabbi. He suggested I look for professional help if I wanted it. I told him I wasn't ready for that right now. As a single dad who had just lost part of my family income, I couldn't afford it either. Brian told me that his sessions wouldn't cost anything, but he did say that I would need to agree to some rules if I wanted to keep going. He mentioned that we could talk about it later when I knew more about what I wanted. I drove home, feeling almost like my old self again. Sadly, things didn't stay that way for long. I stopped by the house to pick up something for Steve that I had forgotten when I dropped off Danny. As I got to the house, I saw Jenny's sister, Nicole, waiting for me on the porch. I wasn't in the mood to talk to her right then. I was worried I might ruin the first good moment I had since Jenny left, and I really liked Nicole. I didn't want to have a tough talk with someone who had always been nice to me. "We need to talk," she said. It was clear and direct, and I knew she wouldn't leave until I heard her out, so I let her in. Jenny's not happy. She hasn't been herself since she came home. She cries a lot. She won't eat, and I'm really worried about what's going on in her mind. She took 2 weeks off from work, but I doubt she will go back. She told me what you found out, and I can see why you are upset. She stopped for a moment before she kept going. But your punishment is too much. Taking Danielle away is really unfair. Why would you do that? You should at least let her explain what happened. Even if you still want to end things with her, please let her share her side of the story. Do it for her. Do it for Danielle, for yourself, or for whatever makes you feel good. But I'm begging you to talk to her. I thought about it a lot. Part of me wanted to try to understand, but part of me was scared to learn more than I already knew. I knew she had done something the night before, that night after the video. I just wasn't sure I could handle the truth. I really can't right now. I'm really upset right now. If I see her again, I might lose my cool. I know I was harsh, maybe too harsh. But what's done is done. I can't trust her with my daughter. I also don't want to be near her. I get that you're stuck in the middle of this situation, but my answer remains no. Nicole looked at me with a sad face. For a moment, I thought she felt sorry for me, not for her sister. But that didn't make sense, so I brushed it off as my imagination. She said goodbye with a quick hug that surprised me. I was ready for shouting and bad words. Ever since I saw that video, everything has felt strange. The next 2 weeks passed by with few surprises. I had a normal chat with Jenny's mom and told her she could see Danielle whenever she wanted. The only rule was that Jenny should not see her. I reminded her that Danielle would not lie to me, and I'd know if they tried to hide things from me. I really hoped it wouldn't come to that. My daughter had already lost too much. I kept going to my weekly meetings with Brian. The 4th meeting changed everything for me. The first meeting was very helpful. I left feeling good, but I couldn't stay that way. Our next meetings felt a lot like the first one. I went in expecting it to be the same. Brian got right to the point. "John, do you remember our first talk?" I wasn't sure what he meant, so I just said yes. I let you speak for 3 weeks without stopping. That showed me you are a good man and a good dad. The issue is that you don't see the truth." He paused for a moment, giving me time to think about what he had just said. This is a time when you need to remember that I am a preacher, so I may not speak like a regular counselor. When I showed that I understood, he went on, "Something very bad has happened to you and your family. Now you have to decide what to do next in your life. Will you stay stuck as a victim and just drift along, or will you take a step forward and become a stronger person?" I didn't see that coming. "What exactly do you mean, Brian?" "First, you need to understand why this happened to you. Then you need to decide how to handle it." He paused again, looking at me seriously. "You need to say you're sorry to your wife." That statement shocked me so much that I almost reacted badly. Instead, I just stared at him, unsure if he was joking. "I'm not joking, John. If you want to heal from this, you must see how wrong you were and what it has cost you. What did it cost me? My wife's actions cost me my marriage. My daughter is in a really tough place. Her family finds it hard to be around me. My close friends treat me like I have a serious illness. How can you discuss costs with me? This is what I've been talking about. Your choices led to everything you're describing. You made a choice, and now you have to deal with what comes from it. I'm here listening to you talk about how good your life was. Then one thing happens, and everything falls apart. I could feel my anger rising. What are you saying? Am I wrong to be upset because she was unfaithful? It wasn't just an affair, it was a deep betrayal of what we shared. She spent a whole weekend acting inappropriately, being public with many different people. Brian gave me a mocking look, but he kept his voice steady. "I never said you shouldn't feel upset, and I didn't suggest you should leave her. You have every right to feel both ways. I said you need to find out why she hurt you and ask her to forgive you." His expression changed to look like mine when I'm upset with Danielle. People often misunderstand forgiveness. It's not just about letting someone off easy. It's about finding peace for yourself. Right now, you are acting as if you are the judge and the punisher. You're doing this to someone you still care for, and the guilt is hurting you more than you think. When he saw that I was really listening, he went on. He told me a true story about a mother whose son was killed. She lived with sadness for many years until she decided to visit the man who was found guilty of the crime. After meeting him in prison, she chose to forgive him. By letting go of her anger, she was able to start living her life again. This didn't mean she loved him or understood what he did. It didn't change his punishment or how others saw him. She just needed to let go of the pain so she could move forward with her life. Remember all the nice things you shared about your wife? How much you loved her and how she made your life better? Please tell me if I'm wrong. Has this punishment helped you or Danielle in any way? Since I wasn't going to defend myself, he went on, any mental health expert would tell you that holding on to anger is harmful. This grudge you're holding on to will only bring you more sadness. I care about you and I want you to feel better. But I don't think that will happen unless you face your fears. I don't want to sit back and watch you suffer when you have a chance to make things right and maybe even heal. I'd like you to think about this before we schedule another session. I'm not sure if it would be helpful for us to meet again until you start to take charge of your life. I also want to suggest that you think about inviting Jenny to join us in a session. I believe it could really help you find a way to cope with your pain. I sat there trying to take in everything he said. I really liked our sessions, and I believed he genuinely wanted to help me get better, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I felt very different leaving than I had in past sessions. Surprisingly, I wasn't very upset by Brian's words. I just didn't know if I was ready to talk to her. I hadn't spoken to Jenny since I ended things between us. If I believed what he said, it could help me. But how could I ever get past what she did and ask for her forgiveness? I couldn't even picture having a session with her. It would feel like saying we could fix everything, and that felt impossible. That's how I saw it. I called Steve and asked if he could watch Danny for the night. Then I started a long drive. There were too many memories at home, and I needed some space to think. After a couple of hours, I stopped and got a hotel room. I spent most of the night either walking around the hotel or sitting in my room. Finally, I made up my mind and managed to get about 2 hours of sleep before waking Danny up. I called Nicole. She answered with a chilly hello. When I asked if we could visit Jenny's house, her tone became friendlier. She said they would be home all day. I told her she could tell Jenny we were coming or keep it a surprise. It was up to her. On the way out, I told Danielle we were going to her stepmother's house. I thought about what I had heard about her not eating and crying a lot. I worried about how this might affect Danielle, especially after she had lost her mother to cancer. I decided to share something with Danielle to help her understand why Jenny was feeling so low. I told her that Jenny had been very sad since I asked her to leave, and that Danny should spend the day with her. That's all I could say to a 7-year-old. She was eager to help. She promised to take good care of Jenny, and I felt sure she would be busy enough to not feel sad herself. I felt proud of her. When we arrived, Nicole greeted me with a warm hug. "Thank you so much for this," she said. "I was really worried about her. I just didn't know what else I could do." I told her, "Just so you know, this doesn't change anything between us. I just think this is the right thing to do. I didn't bring up Brian and his proposal. This is just the beginning. You should get ready for what comes next." She didn't explain more. I called out, "Jenny, we have company." I heard a big sigh from the other side of the room, followed quickly by Danielle shouting, "Jenny!" She ran up to her stepmother and jumped into her arms, almost knocking Jenny off her feet. I felt my knees go weak when I saw how much my wife had changed. She was very thin. I guessed she weighed no more than 90 pounds. Her face looked pale and drawn, like she was not well. There were dark circles under her eyes, showing that she hadn't slept in days, maybe even weeks. Her hair looked messy. She wore wrinkled sweatpants and moved slowly. It was a sight that broke my heart, especially for the woman I loved the most. I watched as they hugged and cried. Danielle talked a lot, trying to tell Jenny everything that had happened over the past 5 weeks. It made me feel terrible about myself. Finally, I couldn't stay quiet. "Jenny?" She looked up at me. "I need to go out for a while. Do you want Danny to stay with you?" I wanted them to have some time together, but I didn't want her to feel like she had to, if she wasn't ready for that. She replied, her voice sounding as gentle as her face looked. "I'd like her to stay, thank you." I said sorry and walked out. I had no other place to go, but I couldn't stay there any longer, so I decided to head home and try to take a short nap. It didn't help at all. I couldn't stop thinking about Jenny. How could she do this to herself? I felt hurt by her cheating, but I was still trying to get on with my life. What I saw in Nicole surprised me. How could someone who thought it was okay to cheat on me feel so upset about it? When I got back to Nicole's house, she told me they were painting upstairs. She thanked me again for changing my mind about her sister and Danny. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded and said something quiet. I mentioned that I wanted to send Danny downstairs to talk to Jenny. Nicole said she would keep an eye on her. I walked to the guest room and saw that they were acting just like before. I took a deep breath and knocked on the open door. "Daddy!" Danny shouted, running up to me for a hug. I couldn't help but see that she looked much happier and more at ease than before. Ever since Jenny had left, she had been so anxious, and it hurt to see her like that. I would have done anything to help her feel better. I told her that Nicole needed to talk to her downstairs. She told Jenny she would be right back and gave her a quick kiss before hurrying out of the room. I walked into the room and sat down at the table across from Jenny. We needed to talk, but I wasn't sure how to start. She seemed ready to say something, but then hesitated. "John, I want to thank you for letting Danielle come over. It means a lot to me." I nodded and felt nervous as I began to speak. "I don't want this to be just a one-time thing." As she started to respond, I gently interrupted her. "Please let me finish. I want you to see her whenever you want, either at my house or anywhere." "I need a babysitter," I continued, "but there are 3 things I need you to agree to first." She didn't say anything, but I could tell she was nervous about what I might ask of her. "First, while she is with you, no other men can come to see her." I noticed she was getting ready to argue, so I raised my hand, asking her to let me speak. "I know you might say you can't do it, but I need to insist. If any guy, even one of our friends, wants to visit us, you must check with me first. Also, Megan can never see my daughter. That's a strict rule. If I find out you haven't followed that rule, I will have to end the visits right away. There won't be any more chances." I paused and gave her a chance to reply. "There are no other men, John. Even if there were, I would never hurt her. Megan isn't the issue. I haven't spoken to her in months." I nodded to show I believed her. I waited for her to finish before going on. "Second, you need to start taking better care of yourself." I saw her look away and blush, so I stood up and took her hand. I know you've been feeling really sad. Everyone told me how unhappy you were, and I should have paid attention. Danny will understand what you're going through. She needs to know you're all right for her own comfort. I'm also worried about you. But don't do this just for me. Do it for her, okay? She didn't say much. I felt a bit awkward talking to her like this, but I thought that reminding her how your sadness might affect Danielle would help. Finally, she softly said she would try. I took a deep breath for the hard part. Number 3, I need you to forgive me. I felt silly saying that. I stopped for a moment because I didn't know how to explain. Forgive you for what? She asked, looking confused. I'm the one who did everything. It's all my fault. She started to cry quietly. I gently turned her face toward mine, hoping to make it easier for both of us. I want you to forgive me for hurting you on purpose. What you did really hurt me. But no matter what really happened, I know you never wanted to hurt me. I remember how sad you were when you came back from New Orleans. I saw her face turn red when we talked about the trip. It was clear you felt bad about what happened. I don't need to know anything else right now. What I did was out of anger. I did it to make you feel bad. I tried to hurt you as much as I could. I feel really ashamed for doing that, and I regret dragging Danielle into it to make things worse. I'm sorry. She looked down at her hands and stayed quiet for a long time. I started to worry that I had gone too far when she finally spoke. I should have told you about New Orleans when it happened. It's my fault that you found out in such a terrible way. You didn't have time to think about it, and you tried to hurt me back like I hurt you. I don't blame you for anything. I just wish it hadn't happened. I would do anything to change it all. She looked at me with so much sadness that I found it hard to hold her gaze. Of course I forgive you. She hugged me and kissed my cheek. It was a small act to show her care without needing me to say anything back. As Danny and I walked away, I thought about what Brian had said. For the first time, it made sense since I saw the video. I felt lighter, as if some weight had been taken off my shoulders. Nothing had changed. I was still losing my wife, but now I felt included in the choice. Now I had to think about the other things Brian wanted me to do. I considered asking Jenny what happened, but there were some problems. First, I couldn't be sure if she would tell the truth. Second, I might get too upset hearing it from her, and I wanted to stay calm. Third, I wasn't sure if it was the best time to talk about it. I didn't want to make things worse again. I made some calls and found a private investigator in New Orleans that I could trust. Surprisingly, it was quite affordable. I was expecting something fancier. I watched too much TV. 2 days later, he reached out with the name, address, and job details of the performer from the video. His name was David, and he was now working at a law firm. He promised me that David would be there all next week. On Monday morning, I dropped Danny off at Nicole's house, saying I would be back on Tuesday. I took a late morning flight and got to New Orleans just after 1 o'clock. I grabbed a cab and went right to the law office where David worked. He had gotten a full-time job as a law clerk while finishing law school. The office he worked at before told me he left back in November. I felt nervous as I walked through the doors. This was the strangest thing I had ever done, and I still wasn't sure I really wanted to hear what he had to say. I thought that seeing him at work would give me an edge. It was a big, well-known firm, and I was sure he didn't want to get in trouble there. I was unsure about what to expect from him, so I wanted to catch him off guard a bit. I asked for him at the front desk, and they told me he was there. I waited about 10 minutes while they found him. I was relieved I didn't have to make up a story about why I wanted to see him. I figured they would think it was for work, which saved me some trouble. My stomach felt tight as he walked into the lobby. He looked different in a shirt and tie, but I would have recognized him anywhere. His face was stuck in my memory, and I wondered if I would ever forget it. He greeted me with a handshake and asked who I worked for. I felt a little happy when I saw the surprise on his face when I said I was there because he met my wife at his old job. He nervously signaled for me to follow him and led me to a small meeting room on the second floor. We stepped inside, and he closed the door behind us. "Look, I don't want any trouble," he said. "I don't work for them anymore, and I hope it doesn't cause any trouble for either side. This job means a lot to me, and I can't let them find out about it." He looked really upset. I felt relieved I had met with him. "David, I'm not here to make things hard for you. I just need some information. If you help me, I'll leave and won't bother you again. But if you don't want to answer or if you lie, I can make things very difficult for you. Trust me, you wouldn't like that." He seemed worried. "I'm not sure what information I have. I worked for them for a few months and there were many get-togethers. I don't know if I can remember anything useful for you." "Actually," I started, "when did you first meet my wife?" "Not at a party. You talked with her friend Megan the night before," I continued. "And then you saw her again at the bachelorette party." His eyes widened, and he suddenly seemed much more uncomfortable. "You're Jenny's husband?" It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I could tell he was waiting for me. "Yes, my life is a mess because of what happened that weekend. I'm trying to make sense of it all. Thinking about talking to you makes me feel sick, but I have no choice. You'll have to trust that I won't hold back my feelings about how things went wrong for you and your nice job." I could tell he believed every word I said. "I will share everything you want to know, but not here. You need to come to my house after work. I'll give you the address." "That's fine. I already have it." I wanted him to feel a bit uneasy. He was much bigger than me and over 10 years younger. I didn't want any trouble. I just wanted some answers. But I needed him to think it was better for him to help me. I left and went for lunch. I got to his place at 6 o'clock, just like we agreed. When I rang the bell, he opened the door right away. He welcomed me inside and offered me a chair in the living room. He asked if I would like something to drink. He grabbed a beer and sat down across from me before I could say anything. He pushed a videotape toward me that was already on the coffee table. "Everything you need to know is on there," he said softly. I was really mad. "You recorded this? Did she know?" I asked. "No, she didn't. It's not what you think. I've always recorded private events. It's for my safety if anything goes wrong. I'm a law student, remember?" I nodded, looking at the plain tape with the name Jenny written on the back. It was actually a smart idea. But then I realized that even though it was painful to talk about that weekend, it would feel even worse to watch the tape. I felt like I might be sick. "Is there anything I need to know that isn't on the tape?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Yes, there's actually a lot you need to know." Megan reached out to me a week before the wedding. She knew my company was in charge of the bachelorette party and asked if I could work with another guy for a private gathering the night before. Someone had recommended me to the bride, and she passed that on to Megan. Megan said the party was mainly for her friend Jenny. She wanted to help Jenny get away from a bad situation with a hurtful partner. He paused and looked at me closely. I could tell he was waiting for my reaction. "You never hit her, did you?" I felt defensive and a bit angry. "No, I never would have. We had a strong marriage before her trip. In fact, our marriage was still good for another 6 months after she returned. Then I received a message with my old company's website. I saw a video of a party with her, you, and Megan. That changed everything." To my surprise, he looked let down. "YouTube broke you up. Well, what did you think? What did you expect?" When I learned about what she had done over those 3 days, I was shocked. "You mean 2 days, right?" I replied, confused. He noticed my blank stare and thought for a moment. "She didn't mention Sunday, so we haven't really talked about anything. We haven't talked since I found out." He seemed worried. "Look, John, I know you don't want my advice, but you need to discuss everything that happened with her." But it wasn't what it seemed. I was confused. What were we even talking about? It seemed like she had fun with you and Megan for 3 days. "And now you're saying I shouldn't be upset about it?" "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I felt I needed to share what happened when Jake and I came on Friday. Your wife had already drunk quite a bit. Megan sat with her and pretended to be drunk too. By Sunday, I found out that she had tricked Jenny." "What do you mean she tricked her?" I asked. "Did she slip up or something?" David stared at the ground. "No, it's nothing like that. I don't want to talk about it. Just watch the video and see for yourself. I know it's going to be rough for you, but telling you won't change anything. I don't understand why you even believed me." I had to agree with him on that. I nodded and he went on. "You saw the video from the website, so there's nothing I can tell you about Saturday that you don't already know. No one informed her about what would happen at the party. Otherwise, I'm sure she wouldn't have gone. I think she was so upset on Friday night that she drank too much again. I'm not sure exactly what went down, but I believe Megan talked to her for hours. In the end, Megan persuaded Jenny until she couldn't say no anymore." Things get wild at these parties. I've seen many women do things I would never consider doing in normal life. I was really taken aback by how caring he seemed. I thought he would be rude and full of himself, but I was surprised to see how sad he looked. He frowned and seemed to lose his focus for a moment as he tried to gather his thoughts. He went on to say, Megan performed her dance on stage with the other girls. When Jenny didn't see it coming, Megan pushed her onto the stage. I think Jenny was too far away to say anything. That's when I stepped in. He looked at me with pain in his eyes. I promise, if I had known what was happening, I wouldn't have gotten involved. I felt confused. You tell me all this and then say you didn't know? Why should I believe you? Because Jenny told me. When did she tell you? On Sunday, when she got up. I started to see the bigger picture. So she stayed with you on Saturday night? He turned away from me again. Yes, but it's not what you think. The camera stopped recording because she got startled and ran out of the room. I was very worried, but Megan told me not to stress. She said you called and shouted at her because you weren't home on Saturday. I should have realized there was more happening, but it didn't cross my mind that it was about a guy who hurt his wife. I didn't question it because I thought it was good to help someone like her escape from a bad situation. Megan asked me to stay in their hotel room after the party to keep her safe. I told her I was too tired for anything else that night, so she asked me to stay with Jenny in the morning instead. When I got there, Jenny was already asleep, so I climbed into bed and fell asleep right away. The next morning, she woke up before I did. She rushed to the bathroom and started being sick. I thought it was just a hangover, but then I heard her crying. I went to the door and saw her curled up on the bathroom floor. It scared me a lot. I tried to help her get out of that place, but she wouldn't budge. After about 30 minutes, I finally got her to go back to bed. I made her some coffee, and then she started talking to me. It was really hard to listen. She would talk for a minute, and then she would cry a lot. She spoke about you and your daughter. She said how great her life used to be. She was scared that she had ruined everything and felt very guilty. I stayed with her until it was time for her to go to the airport. The whole time, she kept blaming herself for what had happened. Just before she left, she said that you could never forgive her. I told her that she shouldn't tell you about it. I said that if it were my wife, I wouldn't want to know. If she truly didn't want it to happen, then instead of hurting everyone, she should try to make things right with you. It seemed to help her at least get herself together to go to the airport. I felt really bad about everything that happened, so I called on Monday and quit the job I had just taken. At first, it seemed like a great deal, getting paid to have fun. But when I saw what she went through on Sunday, I started to think about how many other couples might have broken apart because of these parties. I had already gotten a good offer at the firm but kept putting off starting. After spending Sunday with Jenny, I knew it was time to move on. That's all I know. If you trust me, don't watch the tape. It will be really annoying to see it that way. If you do watch it, I hope it helps you understand that she was tricked by Megan. All I can say is I'm sorry. Jake and I helped. Honestly, I think you're making a mistake if you don't give her another chance. She told me she never meant for any of this to happen and wished it could all go back to normal. She had no reason to lie to me, so I believe her. When he was done, I tried to figure out how I should feel. Should I thank the man who entertained my wife? Now that I understood more about what had happened, I wondered if it even mattered. Jenny was still being unfaithful to me. At least I knew it was just a one-time thing and not something she was searching for, even if she was drunk. She had agreed to it and then made it worse by doing it again the next night. Hearing David talk about her feelings of guilt made me feel a bit sorry for her, but I couldn't shake off the images from the party. The next question was whether I should watch the video to see if it matched what David said happened. I thought it would probably be worse than what I had seen at the party, but what would it change? I wasn't sure if I could handle seeing her in that way. I kept thinking about what I did to deserve this. Since everything happened on the first day, I decided to take an earlier flight home. I arrived late, so I let Danielle stay with Jenny and went to bed. The next morning, I called Brian. I shared some of what happened and asked to meet up. He said he would be free this afternoon and I could visit him. That's fine. Now that you know some of what happened, it's important to talk to your wife about it. I noticed that Brian often called Jenny his wife or used other sweet names for her instead of just saying her name. There must be a special reason for this, but I'm not sure why. Now that I have some answers, I feel ready to speak with her, but the problems are still there. How can I trust she's telling the truth, even if I want to believe her? If everything happened as David said, then she deserves more kindness than I showed her. But that doesn't make what she did right. She was still unfaithful to me, and I doubt she would feel sorry for me if I got drunk and spent time with someone else. And then there's the video. Should I watch it? These are all very important questions to think about. Sadly, I don't have answers to any of them. All I'm asking you to do is take control of your life. It's not because I think my way is the best. I let you share your thoughts for 3 weeks so I could understand how you feel about right and wrong. Your struggle with what you believe is causing you pain. You can't let Jenny go because you still love her, but you feel she should face the consequences for her actions. You need to figure out what you can accept and what you're willing to lose. It's not easy, but that's just how life is. I gave him a look of disappointment. Thank you. But that didn't help much. John, all I can say is if you can make a choice without watching the video, then don't watch it. There will be more hurt along the way, and it could make things even harder for you. If you feel you need to see the video to understand how she acted, then go ahead and watch it. In my opinion, if you feel like you need to watch it to decide, then you might already know what choice you have to make. I thanked him and took Danielle away. I talked to Jenny for a moment, trying not to sound too curious. I brought up Brian's sessions and asked if she wanted to join us. She was excited about it, which made me a bit anxious about what she thought would happen. I wanted to keep things simple so she wouldn't expect too much. I just wanted to solve everything so I could move on. I didn't check the tape until right before the meeting. It was locked in my desk, safe from Danny's view. That night, right after dinner, I knew I had to watch it. I asked Steve and Sharon to take care of Danielle for the night, just in case I found it hard to handle everything. I needed some time alone. I sat at home staring at the tape on the coffee table in the living room. Eventually, I couldn't wait any longer and put it into the VCR. Inside the room, Megan, Jenny, David, and another woman were talking. Jake must have been keeping them busy while David was focusing the camera on something. Maybe it was in a bag to capture things quietly. They danced together and shared how much they enjoyed the club, while Jake and David talked at the other side of the room. Jenny pulled Megan aside. Coincidentally, they were right next to the camera. I couldn't see them, but I could hear their conversation clearly. Jenny was starting to slur her words. Megan, I want to help you, but having 2 guys in my room would really upset John. I can only do so much for you before I need to go. I'll rent another room for the night, and you can have all the fun you want, Megan replied. Don't worry, Jen. Just help me tease them a little so I can get them where I want them to be. You can make your excuses and leave while I have a night to remember. When I danced with Jake, I noticed he was really attractive. This is going to be great. Just trust me. I won't let them do anything you're not okay with. When I know they're ready, I'll tell you. It's time to go. Megan walked to the other side of the room and turned on the music player. Upbeat music started playing and the girls began dancing with the guys. They looked like they were picking up right where they had left off at the club, already moving to the beat. They were having a good time. They swayed close to each other as the songs changed. But I noticed that David never tried to touch Jenny in a way that might make her think he wanted anything more. The guys handed out drinks, and everyone sat together for a bit. After a while, they got back to dancing. Megan then suggested a fun party game. I didn't think the details mattered much. Later, I pressed the eject button on the remote and took the tape out of the VCR. The tape flew from my hands and broke into many pieces when it hit the brick wall by the fireplace. I tossed the pieces into the fire and ran out of the house, trying to find a way to not make things worse. The next morning, when I picked up Danny, Sharon looked worried. John, are you okay? I didn't want to talk, so I just said it wasn't easy. When she pushed me to say more, I reminded her she didn't want to get involved in my problems. She sighed, but let me go. After lunch, I left Danny with the babysitter and, feeling unsure, headed to my meeting. When I arrived, I saw that Jenny was already there. As I walked into Brian's office, I heard them chatting nicely. They both stood up to say hi, but when Jenny saw my face, she sank back onto the couch. Brian looked at me with concern and asked, John, is something wrong? I tried to tell the truth. No, I'm just having a tough day. I decided it was best to just start the meeting. Unfortunately, it was a mess. Brian knew something was off, but didn't push me to talk. Jenny didn't realize it, but my clear mood made her uncomfortable. I felt terrible because I wanted to stand up and yell, but I knew that would only make things worse. There was something else bothering me too, but I couldn't handle it right now, so I pushed it aside. When our time was over, Jenny left. I said goodbye, but I stayed to apologize to Brian for being in a bad mood. He didn't let me finish. "Just watch the tape," he said. All I could manage to say was yes. Was it as bad as I thought? Brian, it was even worse. I have no idea what to do. I tried to stay quiet so I wouldn't say anything I would regret, but I really wanted to tell her how angry I was and how much she hurt me. I couldn't believe she acted like that. Brian looked at me for a moment. I hoped he wouldn't push for more, but I understood why he wanted to know what happened. Was David telling the truth? I sighed. The worst part was that he was. She had been drinking. Her best friend played a trick on her, and she was persuaded by 3 people working together. Eventually, she gave in and had a good time. I wanted to be upset about how they treated her. I really did. She said no many times and insisted she didn't want to do anything that would hurt me. When she finally agreed, everything changed. I realized I couldn't handle it anymore and decided to stop the video. "John, you need to find a quiet place to sit down with her and talk. She will be embarrassed that the video exists and upset that you watched it. You have to be gentle with her because she is feeling very vulnerable right now. If it takes you a week to make sure you can talk to her without being angry, give her that time. You should have this conversation alone because I don't want her to feel trapped. Once you've talked it over, I will help in any way I can. Please call me if you want to talk again." I walked away thinking that things were as bad as they could be. On Saturday, I decided it was time to have a talk with her. I was still worried I might lose my temper, but I had calmed down enough to try. I couldn't sleep at night with all these thoughts in my head, so I wanted to just get it over with. After leaving Danielle with Steve and Sharon, I went to pick up Jenny. I had called her earlier to say I needed to talk about something important. I didn't want to surprise her, but I also didn't want to make her nervous. I asked if she wanted to go to the park where we used to take Danielle. It was usually quiet there, so we could have some space to chat. I thought about telling her right away about David in the video, but I decided that was too much. It might upset her so much that we wouldn't be able to talk at all, especially since I wasn't in a great mood. I understood that things could go wrong, so I promised myself to stay calm. I wanted to deal with the situation in the best way I could. I couldn't be selfish, no matter how angry I felt. In the 2 weeks since, I let her see Jenny again. Danielle seemed to be doing better. "Jenny, I think I'm ready to hear your side of the story if you still want to share it with me. I know you've been carrying this for 7 months, and it must be tough. I can't promise I won't feel upset, but I will try to listen and understand. I just want you to be completely honest. Please don't hold back. The worst thing would be to find out later that you didn't tell me the truth about something. Okay?" She nodded and took a moment to think. After a deep breath, she began. "Things haven't been good for us in the 2 months before the trip. I know you have been trying, and I have been trying too, but I felt really worried. I was spending a lot of time with Megan, and she kept saying things that made me feel worse. I didn't realize it back then, but I think she was trying to upset me on purpose. She never said anything bad about you directly, but her words made me feel unsure of myself. She shared stories about friends who had problems like ours and ended up separating. I told her that wouldn't happen to us, but deep down, I was scared. I really tried to make our relationship work, but it was tough. I worried it wouldn't improve, and the thought of losing you was too much to handle. I think I got defensive because whenever I tried to help us, nothing seemed to work. I missed being close to you so much that I let her stories get to me." She paused for a moment before she went on. "Just before we left for New Orleans, she kept saying that being apart for a few days would be good for our marriage. She suggested I have fun so I could relax and let things get better when I came back home. On Thursday night, we went to the hotel bar and danced for a few hours. On Friday afternoon, Angie, the bride, and I did a few things together. We went to another bar where we met 2 guys. Suddenly, she stopped talking and started crying softly. I took her hand and encouraged her to keep going. We all danced together for about an hour, but then Megan and I went to the bathroom. She was telling me how much she liked the guys and asked me to help bring them to our room. She said it would make me feel better to flirt with another man, knowing I wouldn't actually do anything wrong. She would be the one spending time with them, so I wouldn't feel bad. She looked up at me, tears on her cheeks. I felt so lost. I was truly sorry. I had a few drinks and I wasn't thinking about what might happen. I didn't consider how you might feel about me being friendly. I just wanted to help her. She stared at her hands, rubbing them together in her lap. We stayed at the club for at least another hour. Megan asked if they wanted one more drink, and they said yes. I thought I was doing something fun for her and planned to leave before things got crazy. I guess I didn't realize how tipsy I was already. Things I knew I shouldn't do didn't seem so important. I just focused on how she could have a fun night, and I was looking forward to coming home to see you smiling. When we returned to the room, they kept giving me drinks and dancing with us. Megan thought up a silly game for us to play. I can't believe I said yes, but I did. Things started to get out of hand right after that, and I made a big mistake. She looked at me again, and I would do anything to change what happened. I love you, and I never thought I could feel this way. I believed I was safe, thinking that Megan was making sure everything was all right. I didn't expect to let myself get involved in something like this. When she paused in her story and began to cry harder, I let her continue. I wanted to hear her side and see how it compared to what David had said and what I saw on the tape. I was surprised when she confessed to everything without blaming anyone else. I didn't know if she was just trying to own up to it all, or if she really didn't see that her friend had tricked her. She chose not to share the messy details, and I didn't want to push her. She admitted that she spent time with David, Jake, and Megan when it was all over. I gave her a moment to collect her thoughts. It was really hard for her to say these things, and I felt a bit unsure about asking more questions. There was a big question we needed to talk about. "Jenny, if what you're saying is true, why didn't you come home on Saturday?" I asked her. She looked at me, her eyes filled with real pain. She had a few reasons, but I knew I wouldn't like any of them. Still, I understood she was uncomfortable. I needed to hear what she had to say, so I urged her to go on. First, I felt really guilty about what I did. I didn't know how to face you, so I thought taking a couple of extra days would help me be ready for how upset you would be. Second, I just wasn't ready to talk about it. If I had come home, you would have seen right away that something was wrong. She turned her gaze away, and I thought I noticed a hint of anger. Third, Megan told me that Friday was my fault, and that it showed our marriage was in trouble. As she wiped away another tear, she still wouldn't meet my eyes. She said I started everything by taking her hand and pulling it under her skirt. Then she said I took one of the guys and started kissing him. That's when things really went wrong. She paused and finally looked me in the eye. I thought we were friends and that she wouldn't lie to me. When I shared my view of what happened, she said it must have been the drinks and the blindfold. That made everything feel more serious. She mentioned they were doing the same things to me that they were doing to her, and everything was okay until I lost control. I felt my jaw tighten with anger as I listened to more of Megan's twists. It was hard to see this apart from Jenny's choices, but it was clear she had no idea that Megan could treat her this way. Her friend was using Jenny's trust to hurt our marriage. I hoped that one day I could find a way to deal with that. Yeah, she told me she got carried away because of what I did. I shouldn't have trusted her, but I felt terrible about myself. It was easy to believe that my memories were just my way of making sense of what happened. I could have stayed at the hotel all day trying to understand things, but she asked me to go with her. She said if I disappeared, everyone would notice something was wrong. She told me the best way to avoid suspicion was to act normal. I felt really confused. Jenny was in so much pain that it was hard to see her like that. I couldn't think of how to help her without making things more awkward. So I hoped she would see that I wasn't blaming her and would feel supported. Then, Saturday night, a new problem came up. I can't remember how it all started when we got there. No one told me what to expect. I had a few drinks with Megan while Angie opened her gifts, and the girls were laughing and having fun together. When a man came out to announce the show, I wanted to leave, but I felt strange. I sat there for a while, trying to sort out my thoughts, but I couldn't. Some girls were dancing on the stage, separate from the others, and I remember Angie pulling me along. Then, suddenly, a woman grabbed me from behind, and I asked her to stop. I don't remember much after that, but I realized I was lying on the stage, and so was Megan. You saw when the performer came up to me. I know I tried to say no, but everything felt blurry. I think I just gave in. I felt sick from the night before, so I only had a couple of drinks. At least, that's what I thought. I can't really explain it, but it's true. And if Megan was really telling the truth about not drinking much, I suspected she might have had a hand in it. I didn't like her story about not knowing what happened, but I couldn't find a reason for her to lie, so I accepted it. I already knew most of what had happened. I asked her if she remembered what happened right after because she vanished from the video. She looked really uneasy and said she wasn't sure. It was the first time I noticed she was trying to avoid the topic. I pressed her to share what she knew. She turned away from me. "Do you remember what you told me the night I had to leave? You said I wasn't thinking of Danielle when I acted inappropriately with Megan. Those words hit me hard. They felt rough and mean, even though I knew what I had said was worse." "Yes, I remember that." "Well, you were mistaken. Everything felt like a blur. It felt like a bad dream, and I was completely lost. I knew what I was doing, but it didn't feel real." Then I thought about the talk I had with Danielle the week before the trip. That brought me back to reality, and I flinched. I remember Megan calling for me, asking me to come back, but I just ran out the door without putting on my clothes. When I finally got cleaned up, I noticed people staring at me. I felt so embarrassed that I hurried back to the hotel. Once I was there, I took a long shower and then climbed into bed. I lay there thinking about what I had done and how hard it would be for you to forgive me. I cried until I fell asleep. When Jenny stopped talking, I asked if she was okay. I realized that I hadn't responded much to what she had said because I already knew what was coming next. I felt bad for not being ready to talk about David and for not wanting her to see that I wasn't fine. After a little while, she felt better, and I asked her what happened on Sunday. She told me that she woke up the next morning and found a guy in bed next to her. She didn't know how he got there, but it all happened very fast. She hurried to the bathroom and got sick. After that, she couldn't stop crying. She confirmed what David had said. They had spoken, and he asked her not to tell me anything. As she was heading to the airport, she saw Megan in the hotel lobby, and they had a big argument. Jenny told her to keep her distance and that she couldn't believe Megan had let things get out of hand, even after promising to look after her. Even though Jenny was mad at her friend, she felt more ashamed of what she had done herself. Megan said that Jenny had wanted to act this way ever since she got married, claiming she was helping my wife. This led to Jenny leaving in a taxi while Megan went back to her room. Because Jenny left early, she didn't see Megan again before she went home. They spoke on the phone a few times after that night, but they never met again. When she finished telling me everything, I didn't know what to say. I had thought she might be unclear or try to shift the blame. I expected her to maybe tell a few lies to make herself look better. After watching the video, I wouldn't be shocked if she said she didn't agree to what happened. What surprised me the most was how honest she was, even taking on more blame than she should have. It was hard to hear her story about Saturday. It troubled me, but I didn't sense any dishonesty in what she said, so I left it at that. I let her cry for a long time. I wanted to comfort her but felt stuck because of my own issues. I also thought about telling her about the tape, but I didn't know how to do it without hurting her more. Knowing that David had recorded her acting in a way that felt wrong would be terrible. It would feel even worse to know that I had watched it. I didn't see any reason to bring it up, so I kept it to myself when I finally spoke. I was surprised when my voice came out raspy. "Thank you for being honest with me. I know that was tough for you." She gave me a small smile for my words. Just looking at her made me feel a mix of emotions about what was happening to both of us. I really wanted to hold her until her tears stopped. It hurt to see her suffering. I loved her so much, and it was all very confusing for me. I didn't know what to do next. I drove her home and then went to Steve's house while I waited for Danny to finish his game. I stepped outside with him and shared everything that happened, without going into too much detail. He agreed that I had done the right thing by not telling her everything. He also mentioned how much better Danielle had been doing over the last couple of weeks. He often pointed that out, and I realized it was his way of suggesting that I shouldn't push Jenny away. I agreed that Danny was improving, and I shared that it made me feel even more overwhelmed as we left. I hoped that spending time with my daughter would help me feel stronger. Being with her was what kept me balanced. After that, Jenny and I had 2 weeks of meetings that felt much more useful. Every time Jenny tried to say she was sorry or put herself down, Brian stopped her. He didn't want to talk about blame or apologies. That didn't help with the real problems we faced. My daughter had one parent and one step-parent living in different homes. She felt lost and didn't understand why the grown-ups couldn't fix things. For weeks, Jenny was hard on herself. She didn't take care of her health, ignored her job, and stayed away from life. Ever since the truth came out, I felt like a mess too. My actions toward Jenny made me feel guilty, broke my bond with her family, hurt my daughter, and created distance between me and my close friends. After I made things right and let her spend time with Danny again, life improved a bit. But there was still some tension between me and my close friends. The day before our fourth meeting together, I dropped Danny off at Jenny's mom's house for the night. I needed to make a choice and stick to it. Putting this off was only hurting all of us. I went to one of the bars we usually visit. There was a band playing that I had wanted to see for a long time. I sat alone all night, unable to enjoy anything. After the show, I took another long walk. I seemed to be doing that a lot lately. I wondered if being alone helped me think better or if it was making it harder to see what really mattered. I finally made my way home around dawn and sent a message saying I wouldn't go to work. I made a choice, but it didn't make me feel any better. The meeting was planned for the late afternoon. I got to the church office about 10 minutes late because Danny had a delivery issue. I tried calling to let Brian know, but my call went to voicemail. When I arrived, I saw Jenny's car and rushed to the door. I went inside, but no one was in the lobby like usual. When I arrived at Brian's office, I heard something that made me stop. I didn't mean to listen in, it just happened so quickly. Maybe I should just go. Brian seemed surprised. "Jenny, you can't say that. He's always so upset. I can't stop thinking about how I hurt him. I love him more than anything. And now I feel like I've messed up his life. Maybe it would be better if I just went away." Jenny looked really sad. "But you don't want that, right?" He paused. "No, I need to find a way to make this right." "But how do you fix something that feels so broken?" "I don't want to hurt Danny, but if it helps John, I might move back to New York and start fresh." I could hear her voice tremble as she spoke. "Jenny, I can't make decisions for you, but I really think you should talk to John about everything important. He might not be doing well right now, but he is trying." "You can't expect him to simply forget about what happened, can you?" Brian asked. "Brian, you don't get it. I'm not thinking about this because I'm sad about how he treats me. For 6 months, I tried to find a way to fix things, hoping he would never know. I realized how terrible it was, but I didn't understand how much it really hurt him. I don't think you can ever see me without remembering what I did. If I can't make things better for him, then maybe I should go away so he doesn't have to see me anymore. I just want him to be happy no matter what it costs me. I owe him that." I didn't want to talk about this anymore, so I turned and walked back to the front door, shutting it loudly. As I got closer to Brian's office, I started talking loudly so they would know I was there. "Hey everyone, sorry I'm late." When I walked around the corner, I saw Jenny looking at me, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "Is everything okay?" I tried to seem surprised. Brian answered, "Yeah, we were just talking about something while we waited. Jenny, could you keep going?" She nodded. "Let's pick up where we left off last week. You both have made good progress with the breakup. Now the question is, what do you want to do next? Jenny, what are you trying to achieve?" She stayed quiet for a long time. I thought she might start pleading based on what I heard outside the office. Finally, she looked at me and said honestly, "I want John to give me another chance." Brian waited a moment to see if she would say more, then replied, "Well, that's not really what I was thinking. How about we focus on a smaller goal while we wait to hear from John?" I glanced at him, thinking about how to respond. Then I looked at Jenny, who had turned away. I could see from her posture that she felt very lonely. She likely thought I would be angry with her always, but she still came to these meetings in the park. She honestly answered all my questions, even when I knew they were embarrassing. I couldn't tell if she hoped I would forgive her one day or if she really wanted to make things right for what she had done. In the end, her reasons didn't matter to me. I stared down at the floor. "I want Jenny to come home." After a moment, I looked up. When I did, I saw that my words had taken both of them by surprise. Brian sat there, completely stunned. We had never talked about the idea of getting back together. He thought the best we could do was part ways nicely so we could both go on with our lives. Jenny looked at me in disbelief, as if she thought I was joking. In that moment, I realized just how much I had hurt her. "Jenny, I love you and I miss you. I know I never gave you a reason to think we had a chance, but you tried anyway. There's no way to take back what you did. If you want to come home and try to start fresh, I'm ready to do everything I can to help." I paused for a moment, then added, "For us and for Danny." I waited to see how she would respond. Without saying anything, she stood up, walked over, and knelt down in front of me. She rested her head in my lap and wrapped her arms around my waist. Tears started to flow again. I could no longer hold back my desire to comfort her, so I gently ran my fingers through her hair. After a bit, I stood up and helped her get back on her feet. I kissed her for the first time in 2 months, and she cuddled close to me. After a moment, I softly pushed her away. "There's something we need to talk about first. Is that okay?" She looked at me with a bit of worry, but nodded. I looked at our host and gave him a chance to speak. "Brian, can I keep going, or do you have any questions?" He chuckled a little. "John, I think we've had too many talks like this. That sounds like something I'd say." He signaled for us to continue. "Jenny, I have thought about this a lot. We need to set some rules that both of us can agree on. Things are really confusing right now, and I need to know what to expect before we can move ahead." As I shared my thoughts, she listened carefully. Once I finished, she seemed ready to help. "It's okay. I'll do my best to make this right," Brian said. But I shook my head. "I don't think that's what he means. Right, John?" "No, it's not." Seeing the look of confusion on Jen's face, I tried to explain my feelings even though I wasn't sure how to do it. "I married a strong woman who changed my life. I don't want things to go back to how they were before. I want the woman I fell in love with. It's like a glass that is broken. If we just glue the pieces back together, it won't be strong for long and no one will be happy. But if we take those pieces and melt them down to start fresh, we can create something even stronger. Don't you think so, Brian?" He looked impressed. "Yes, that's a really smart way to think about it. When a couple faces struggles like you have, it often happens because one partner is trying too hard. This can create an imbalance that leads to new issues. The partner who is always trying to please may start to feel unappreciated and upset. At the same time, the other partner might lose respect for someone who always wants to be treated poorly. Good intentions can sometimes lead to bad outcomes. I decided to take charge again. We need some rules based on what happened before. These rules are not meant to punish you or test your commitment. I want you to suggest your own rules, and I expect us both to follow whatever we agree upon." I remember gently touching her cheek when we first started dating. It took us over a year to really understand each other and decide how we want to move forward. If we want to begin again without wasting time, we need to create rules that neither of us can break. I hope this will help us have a fresh start. Jenny was trying her best to keep up, but it was clearly tough for her. When I shared my news, she was so surprised that she stumbled over her words. I knew she would say yes to anything if it meant making things right, but I needed her to see that I was asking for something deeper. If I was going to open up to her after what happened, she had to be ready to give her all. I was not just worried about being hurt again. I wasn't going to share my feelings with Danielle unless we had a solid plan. We needed to spend our time talking about what we both wanted from each other. If we decided to try again, she'd have to go home and tell her family everything. I stayed back for a while to discuss things with Brian. "I'm a bit worried about your mood changes, John, especially when you act too fast. It can create more trouble later on. It wasn't just a random mistake. I've been trying to understand this for weeks, but it felt hard to do. This week, I decided I needed to make a choice and stick with it." Brian seemed deep in thought, just like me. "Okay, I made my choice. But why such a big change for us?" I realized that in all the time I've known Jenny, she never acted like I saw her in that video. She never got very drunk and rarely even acted tipsy. I thought about who I want Danielle to look up to when she grows up. Only one person came to mind. Jenny had something tough happen that she didn't know how to deal with. I still dislike what she did, but I don't think she would do it again. If I accept that this was a one-time thing, then I wonder about what you told me about the person involved or the man. Some people think of the man as someone who won't put up with any nonsense. He might even kick her out for good, no matter what happens. Others might make her wait for months or even years before they let her back in. For me, Being a man means putting my daughter first. She really needs Jenny at home. Brian still doesn't seem sure about this, but it feels like he wants to please everyone. Is that what you want? I don't know how to answer that question. None of this feels right to me. You want me to pick between two sad choices and then decide which one is less sad. I want to build a good relationship with her, but I have no idea how long that might take. Should I try to do it at Nicole's place, or would it be better for her to be at home? I'm not looking forward to the problems we will face. I know I can't just leave like I have been since she left. In the end, it's all about making a choice and then dealing with what happens next. He paused for a moment before he spoke again. I can see you've really thought this over, John, ever since you first came in. I didn't believe it was possible. I'm glad I was wrong. If I had to wager, I'd say you're right. She cares for you a lot. So if you can keep your relationship strong enough to build trust again, I think it will turn out well. I hope so, for both of us. Brian looked at me with a serious face. But now that you've taken charge of things, I think it's time for us to move forward. I glanced at him with worry. I'm not a trained counselor. I just listen and try to help when I can. I have a good friend who is a skilled therapist, and he has a lot of experience with the challenges you're facing. His name is William, and I really think you and Jenny should meet with him, no matter how much you feel like you have everything under control. It won't be easy, and you don't want it to upset Danielle or ruin what you're trying to achieve. When I still didn't look happy, he said, "If it helps, I can have Steve scare you a little." We both laughed, which made things feel less tense. As I left, I thanked him for everything he had done and got ready for another big challenge. That Saturday, Danielle moved back in. It was great for Danny. She and Jenny spent hours talking and having fun together. At the end of the night, Danielle insisted we both help put her to bed. She held Jenny's hand tightly until she drifted off to sleep, not wanting her to leave. This made me feel sure that I had made the right choice. I couldn't think of anyone better to take care of my daughter. After that, Jen and I had a quiet talk and then went to our separate rooms, where we stayed until we decided to change our plans. It was a very unclear homecoming for me. I was really happy to see how joyful Danielle was. I also felt glad to notice how coming home changed Jenny right away. She felt different and more at ease. For me, it wasn't as simple. I still loved her, but being close without real closeness reminded me of how complicated things had become. If it were just the two of us, I would keep my distance until I felt ready. But for my daughter, that kind of distance would be very noticeable. I just smiled and tried to enjoy that Danny was acting like her old self again. This went on for 3 weeks. Jenny was very understanding of my feelings. She didn't push me, but she let me know she was there if I wanted to talk or needed anything. We started meeting with William in the first week after Jenny returned home. He was doing well, but I didn't feel the same bond with him as I had with Brian. He liked to talk about our feelings and do activities that were meant to help us understand each other better. I tried hard not to be stubborn, but I felt like I was wasting my time. In the 4th week, I noticed Jenny was getting a bit upset with me for not being warm. She was nice, but my feelings didn't change much. I felt stuck. I was more at ease with her than when she first returned, but I didn't want to be close or touch her. Another 3 weeks went by and nothing changed. Finally, she insisted we have a talk. "John, I'm getting worried. I appreciate you asking me to come back and I'll wait as long as you need, but I don't feel like you really want me here." She looked at me like she was trying to understand my thoughts. I looked away. "I wouldn't ask you to come home if I didn't want you here." It was clear my acting was not convincing. "Please, honey, something is bothering you, and I want you to tell me about it. How can we get through this if we don't talk about what's on our minds? It's one of our rules. No secrets. You wanted me to return and fight for our marriage. Well, now you have what you asked for. You are not leaving until you explain what this is all about." She stood with her hands on her hips, showing she wasn't going to let me off easy. I realized I needed to tell her everything before she would feel ready to come back. I chose not to mention David and the video. I didn't think she needed that extra pain, and I hoped it would be fine. But now I see that thought about him had crossed my mind every time I thought of us getting close. With her waiting for an answer, I didn't have time to think it through, and everything came out. I told her about meeting David, hearing his side of things, and watching the video. I explained that it all had a purpose. Megan had set the whole thing up before they even left. Lastly, I told her how I had destroyed the tape because I just couldn't bear to watch it any longer. I swear I wasn't upset with you, Jen. I just couldn't shake those thoughts from my mind. She looked at me in shock. I noticed her bottom lip shake and I realized she was really upset. I instantly felt bad for saying what I did. She pushed past me and rushed up the stairs, ignoring my calls for her to stop. I heard the bedroom door slam, even though I wanted her to leave that room for hours. She didn't listen to me at all. I called her mom, who was taking care of Danielle today, and asked if she could spend the night. I told her that Jenny and I had a disagreement, but not to worry. Jenny stayed out all night. I ended up falling asleep on the couch waiting for her. When I woke up the next morning, I noticed a blanket around me. I was a little confused about how it had gotten there. I tried to stretch my stiff neck when I felt something with my foot. I looked down and saw Jenny curled up on the couch across from me, using my leg as a pillow. I looked at her sleeping face, with tear-stained cheeks and puffy eyes, and wished I could do something to make her feel better. I quietly got up from the couch and walked to the kitchen. I made breakfast and brewed some coffee. When everything was ready, I took it back to the living room and put it in front of her. I gently shook her shoulder until she opened her eyes. It took her a moment to see clearly. Then she sat up quickly and leaned into my arms. She spoke in a shaky voice. "I'm sorry you had to deal with all of this because of what I did yesterday. I thought I had already hurt you as much as possible. It must have been awful for you to face all this alone." "I don't know what else to say," she said, starting to cry again. "I'm so sorry." "That's enough for today," I said gently but firmly. "I worked hard to make breakfast and I want you to eat every bite." When she looked at me like she was going to refuse, I added, "You need to take care of yourself or I will make sure you do." So I helped her eat, just like I would have done with my daughter when she was learning to eat on her own. I sat behind her and started to rub her neck and shoulders gently. They were so tense that I wondered how she could relax enough to sleep. I took the dirty dishes to the kitchen while she went upstairs to take a shower. When she came back down, she teased me, saying it was my turn to clean up because I smelled like the couch. I chuckled as I headed up the stairs. The warm water felt nice as I washed off the tiredness from a restless night. I took my time. My mind wandered to breakfast, and I made a promise to myself. Next time, I would try to bring up planning her house party. I wasn't sure whether to make it a big deal or keep it light. I didn't want her to feel overwhelmed. After everything that happened yesterday, I thought she might be feeling shy and not want to get too close. But that was okay. For weeks, she had been telling me she was ready and waiting for me. I could have easily waited too. After I got out of the shower and dried off, I felt much better. I brushed my teeth, shaved, and put on some deodorant. I even added a bit of cologne. Today was the perfect day to take her out and do something special. After that, we could pick up Danny and have some family time. As I thought about the day ahead, my mood kept getting better. I had planned everything and was excited to surprise her. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Jen sitting on my bed. "Surprise," she said with a hint of nervousness. She stood up, looking a bit unsure. "John, I know I said I wouldn't push you until you were ready, but I really need you. Please." I should have responded right away, but the shock of seeing her like this took me by surprise. I was also struck by how lovely she looked. She still hadn't gained enough weight to fully regain her previous shape, but instead of taking away from her looks, it made her seem even more innocent and delicate. I found myself staring at her for a long time. Tears filled her eyes. "John, please. I know how you feel. If you could just be with me once, I promise I won't ask again." I realized she didn't understand why I was hesitating, so I stepped closer and gave her a hug. "Jenny, you don't understand. I want this too." I saw her face change. She seemed hopeful. "I was afraid you wouldn't want to, especially after last night. I don't want others, John. I want you." Then as we talked, I noticed her starting to cry. I placed my hand on her shoulder. "Jenny, what's wrong? Did I do something to upset you?" "No, nothing like that," she said slowly. "But nothing feels right either." Seeing the confusion on my face, she continued, "John, we've both been avoiding this talk since the night I left. I think it's time we face it." I wasn't so sure about that, Jenny. We were finally getting back on track. "Why now?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sadness that surprised me. How can you say that? Nothing is certain. When I couldn't find the words, she said something that made me uneasy. Be honest, weren't you just thinking about the video? It hurt you that I could have fun with those men and Megan? It bothers you that I feel something is missing in our marriage. That's why I did those things. You don't trust me. I did those things and then lied to you, she said tiredly. I tried to stay calm, but she was closer to the truth than I wanted to admit. That's quite a list. Is there anything else? She looked at me again. Do you think I liked being with them more than I like being with you? Because I went along with it. She couldn't say David's name out loud. The look on my face must have shown my feelings. How could she read me so well? I felt ashamed that I was so easy to understand. She looked away for a moment and then glanced back at me with tears in her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. I thought about whether I was right to nod. She told me to begin. I really didn't want to. The main reason I liked Brian was that he never made us do this kind of stuff. If she wanted me to understand her feelings, she could have just said it. I tilted my head to try to make a list. You're upset that I saw you cry? You feel bad that I had to witness it? And what about us? Do you want me to let you make things right? I tried, but nothing else came to mind. I wanted to understand by looking into her eyes, but I couldn't read her face. It reminded me of the first time I saw her at Nicole's house. She seemed distant, but still clearly upset. It didn't add up. She didn't explain, and I felt uncomfortable. What did she mean? I wondered what I might have missed. I'm sad, because I'll have to spend my life knowing you. Think of me as someone unworthy, she said. I was taken aback. Wow. I had never spoken like that before. I love you. I brought you home so we could fix things. Where did you get the idea that I felt that way about you? She kept looking at me and answered, It's not just an idea, it's the truth. When I didn't know how to respond, she carried on. What's the saying? She hesitated for a moment. Oh yes, you are what you decide to be. I've lived my whole life without doing anything like what happened in New Orleans. I chose to be a good person. I didn't lie. People respected me and I was loved. In just 2 days, I destroyed everything. I can never get it back. You will never see me the same way again, knowing that for 48 hours, I acted poorly. I wanted to speak, but she stopped me. It's my fault this all happened. I don't blame you for anything. Somewhere deep inside, I wanted to think that you could forgive me, but I was wrong. You were thinking about that video while we were doing this, weren't you? I was totally confused. I was trying to think of a way to explain myself. How could I help? What was going through my mind? It had only been 2 months since I'd seen that video. How could anyone forget it? I ended up nodding like I didn't know what to say. You weren't doing this for me. You wanted to show that you could do it better than anyone else, and that I didn't need anyone else. You wanted me to see that you were the best. I still don't understand why I thought that was wrong. It was the first real moment I had in 4 months. And you used it to show up the guys who treated me badly. Why would I want you to treat me like they did, just in a better way? I stared at her, shocked. This was getting out of control. I didn't mean to praise anyone too much. I just wanted to make you happy. She looked upset. You don't understand. I was already happy. I didn't go to New Orleans to have a good time. I didn't go there to get hurt and then left behind. I didn't like how I felt, and I never want to do anything like that again. You keep thinking I did it because of something you did, or that I wanted something you couldn't offer. Her face softened. I've never regretted anything in our relationship except for the issues we faced. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I never dreamed about being with other guys. I never felt like I was missing anything while being with you. I made a really bad choice. I still don't know why I did it, but I would do anything to change it. For 6 months, I lived with this secret every day without being able to talk to you. It was hurting me more than I can explain. And now that you are finally giving me another chance, I find out that you think you need to compete with her. I couldn't handle it anymore. I saw the video. You seemed to enjoy it. What exactly did I miss? I suddenly realized I was yelling. Jenny lay on the bed, curled up in a small ball. Oh no, Jenny, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it at all. I didn't know what to say. As she cried, I tried to make her feel better, but nothing seemed to help. I just sat there, feeling useless. I couldn't believe how quickly my anger had come, How could I have acted that way toward her, especially right after she shared her feelings with me? "It's okay," I said. "I understand." Her voice sounded shaky and afraid. "I don't care if this is the worst fight we've ever had. We need to talk about it now." I didn't want to wait any longer. She started to find her strength. "Yes, you saw how I acted in the video. I won't deny it. I won't make excuses. But you didn't see them leave. You didn't see me cry and fall asleep. You didn't see how much pain I felt the next morning that I couldn't even get out of bed. Megan had to bring me some pain medicine from one of my friends in the wedding. You can't imagine how embarrassing it was when the bride asked me what happened and if I was okay. By then, she had gotten her composure back. I really messed up. She looked straight at me and didn't shy away. I acted in a way I regretted, and they treated me like I deserved it. The only thing missing was some cash on the table. I love you with all my heart. But I still did some things that I'm not proud of. I have to live with those choices forever. I know if we stay together, we will argue one day, maybe next week or even in 10 years, and you will think about that video. It's always going to be there. John, I can never go back to the way things were, the way you looked at me like I really mattered. She suddenly stopped, unable to keep talking. I reached out to comfort her, but she hit my chest in frustration, unable to take it anymore. I just held her close and hugged her. She stopped fighting back and began to cry, leaning against me. I felt her tears on my skin, and it was time for me to share my feelings. I wasn't sure how to start, but I knew it was important. When I asked you to come home, I wasn't sure I was ready. I just felt it was what I had to do for Danielle. I could sense her sadness as she leaned tightly against me. I wanted to help her, because seeing her upset was hard for me. I also hated to see you in pain. I'm sorry if that caused problems between us. I just wanted everyone to be happy. She pulled back a little, and I looked down to see her staring at me. But what about you? I shrugged, feeling lost. I was struggling too. I've missed you so much. You mean so much to me. Even if our love wasn't perfect, I could deal with that. If you two were happy, we could figure the rest out. But listen, John, do you really get it? Without love, we can't fix the other problems. Why would you want to talk about us after everything that happened? If you don't love me? I never said I didn't love you. I just couldn't tell how long it would take for us to feel normal again. You don't know how tough this has been for me. Every night, Danielle asks why I can't forgive you and tells me how much she misses you. Our friends say things would be better if I tried again with you. Your family, who I really like, drops hints every chance they get. Honestly, I missed you so much that I felt like I was losing my mind. I looked away, feeling sad. She gently touched my face with her hand. I liked the way she did that. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot to me. I knew it was hard for you. That's why I never pushed you for more. I wanted you to talk to me when you felt ready. I would wait no matter how long it took. She took a deep breath and then said, John, if we keep going like we did today, what will tomorrow be like? I didn't really understand what she meant, so I just shrugged. If you gave me the best time of my life, what comes next? What happens in a month or two when things go back to being normal? If you see this as a contest, then when things aren't perfect, I might start pretending so you don't worry. I even enjoyed those times when one of us wasn't feeling it, and we just held each other. I have to say, I hadn't really thought about what would happen next. Today, I didn't focus on that. I just wanted the first time to be meaningful. Everything we did together was special. The way you started was wonderful, but I didn't come here just for physical pleasure. I came here because I felt alone. I missed my husband, and I wanted him to be close to me. After everything we've faced, I wanted our first time to be one that wouldn't remind you of the past. I wanted to give you what I couldn't give anyone else, myself. The way we ended up together was just what I wanted. I just wanted to be close to you and hold you. It felt amazing because it was with you. You are the only person I've ever loved enough to give my whole heart to. What we shared was something special between us. Later, when we no longer worry about what happened before, we can enjoy our time together freely. I'll do anything you want, just as long as I don't have to share you with anyone else. For now, I'd like things to move slowly so we can get comfortable with each other again. That's what I need. Is that okay? I sat quietly, wrapping my arms around her. There was a lot on my mind. I couldn't believe I was seeing this differently than she was. I didn't feel bad about what she wanted because I was the one who said she shouldn't come home just to help out. She was following exactly what I had asked her to do. Standing up for what is right, I realized that my struggle with the new counselor, my hesitation to tell her about the video, and my distance from her after she returned home were all linked. When I first learned about her trip, I was angry. No, I was very angry. A part of me disliked her and wanted her to feel pain. Once I found out that she had been tricked and didn't do it on purpose, my anger faded. But I still didn't want to get close to her. Even when I asked her to come home, I couldn't imagine being close to her, and I just didn't trust her. I couldn't figure out why I felt this way. Maybe I didn't want to admit it, but she was right. I was afraid. I was worried she might act the same way with Megan and those two men. I didn't feel good enough until today. When I finally thought about what she had done, I let my doubts control me. Now I was tired of being scared. I refused to live in fear of what could happen. That wouldn't make me happy. And I knew Jenny couldn't be happy either. We both deserved more than what we had. Now that everything was clear, maybe we could finally be happy together. I knew her better than anyone, and I truly believed she was honest with me before everything changed. I felt like a very lucky man. Not many men find a woman who can turn their life around like Jenny did for me. I loved everything about her, especially how she pushed me to be a better person. Things weren't perfect yet, but I felt like I wanted her home, and I wanted to be her husband again. I hugged her tightly and promised her that I forgave her and would never hold her past against her again. We spent hours lying together, just touching and talking. Then a thought popped into my head. Jenny, what were those pills you said you were taking? Hello, this is John, Jenny's husband. I need you to do something for me. What is it? I sounded uncertain. It was that night. I told him what I needed to do to end this for good. When I finished, it didn't surprise me when he said no, but I wasn't ready to accept that. I had a problem. I had a video of my wife being taken advantage of by 3 men who tricked her into drinking too much. I knew the police wouldn't like that. It could be a real hassle if they came to that fancy law office to ask questions. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke with a bit of shaking in his voice. So now you are going to threaten me? I sighed. No, I'm not. The way you acted on Sunday after the party made me think twice about getting back at you. I just wanted to say something I could have done. I won't follow you or scare you to get what I want. You have my word. I believe you understand that you owe a big favor to both of us. I want you to do this because it's the right thing. I'm not sure I can bring in a regular lawyer. And even if I could, that would mean involving someone else, and I don't want to put that on Jenny. He took a moment to think, and then agreed to help with everything I asked for the next week. Jenny and I didn't get closer in a romantic way. The first time felt so strange that we were both scared to try again. I know part of me was afraid of making another mistake. The weekend was busy, and we just held each other and shared soft kisses. On Tuesday, my package arrived at work. I signed for it and left right away, hoping everything would be over soon. When I got to the house, I waited at the door for a bit and took a deep breath. It was very important for me to make the right choice, especially since I couldn't win Jenny back as I had wanted. I wanted to do this for her, even if she didn't feel the same way or if it didn't matter to her. I needed to do it for myself. My marriage was falling apart, and both Danny and I were hurting a lot because of it. I couldn't just sit back and let everything happen to me without trying to fix things. Brian's words kept coming back to me. The door opened. "What are you doing here?" Megan asked, looking at me with suspicion. I felt annoyed at her, even though she had helped me and my family a lot. I had never raised my hand to a woman, not even to push one. In that first moment, I felt a strong urge to not just argue, but to really let my anger out on her. I took a deep breath to calm myself, and the moment passed. "I'm here because we need to talk." She looked at me, clearly nervous. "Look, now's not a good time. I was just about to leave." "Well, I think you should change your plans. This is for you." I held out a manila envelope toward her. She took the papers and glanced at what was inside. I felt happy to see her proud look change. Her hands shook as she set the papers down and looked at me. "Do you want to come in?" she asked softly. "You think I want to be alone with you?" I scoffed. "I'm fine where I am. This is a copy of my lawsuit against you for hurting my relationships. If you look at the bottom, you'll see that a strong law firm from New Orleans is helping me. They told me to sue you for $10 million. Her face showed shock and fear. $10 million? Are you serious? I'll never earn that much in my life. No, but I can win this case against you, and then I can take a big part of your paycheck for a long time. Do you pay attention to me? She nervously licked her lips and nodded. This is a copy of the papers. You haven't been officially notified yet. The original will be kept safe. Along with the video David made on Friday night in the hotel room with Jenny, her face went wide open in surprise. I guess David never told her he records all his private parties. I paused, but she didn't say anything. The funny part is, my case might not have been strong if you hadn't taken Jenny over to the camera when you tricked her about what would happen next. A few times she tried to speak, hesitated, and then asked softly, "What do you want?" I let her feel shy for a moment before I answered. "I want you to tell me the truth about the whole weekend. You don't know what I already found out, so be careful if you lie to me or if I think you're not being honest. You can expect someone to come and show you the original video, and then there's no going back." After some time, she opened up and told me everything. Her story matched what Jenny and David had already said. There were a few new details, but nothing I didn't think would come up. When she finished, I asked her a few questions, and she answered all of them clearly. Once I felt satisfied, I turned to leave. I stopped and looked back at her. "One more thing, Megan. If I find out that you tried to reach Jenny, told anyone about New Orleans, shared the video from the website, or got in the way of our lives in any way, we will see each other in court. Do you understand me?" She nodded with tears in her eyes. I thought about feeling happy because of her pain, but honestly, she seemed like a sad, broken person. There was no joy in that for me. Part of me wished she was a man so I could lash out at her. Maybe then I would feel a bit better. At least I could help Jenny find some peace. On my way home, I called Steve and asked if he could do me a favor and pick up Danielle. I explained what was happening, and he said he would be happy to help. When I arrived at the house, Steve was already there. I told Jenny that I wanted us to have a night to ourselves, but she seemed a bit suspicious. She didn't argue. She hugged and kissed Danielle goodbye and then watched her and Steve leave. When they were gone, she turned to me and said, "Okay, what's really going on? I can tell you're up to something." I sat her down on the couch and went out to the car. I came back with an envelope and held it out to her. "Jenny, when you mentioned being worried about what might happen in the future if someone saw the video from the party, I decided to reach out to David for some help." Seeing her surprised face, I quickly added, "He found a lawyer at his work whom he trusts and asked for a few favors. They sent a strong letter to the website saying that you had been given something and that we would report it to the police. All we wanted was to have your part taken out of the video. I think they realized that fighting us would be harder than just doing what we asked. This is a letter from them saying they received your complaint and that they took you out of the video." I quickly looked at the next letter and then gave it to her. "This one is an apology from David. He feels thankful that we could sort things out. He sent back the original tape and included an official document. It states that there are no other copies. No one else can see you in it." The third note is about a lawsuit against Megan because of her comments on the tape and what she told David. She won't win in court. I just spoke with her and said I would wait on the lawsuit unless she tries to reach out to you or gets involved in our lives again. Jenny looked confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Who do you think gave me the website link?" Her confusion turned into anger. "So that's how you found out that she sent it to you? I'm going to get her!" I gently placed my hand on her arm to calm her down. "No, you won't. Her actions were mean and small, but you couldn't keep hiding the truth from me forever. The guilt would have pushed us away from each other in time. She did us a favor by forcing us to face it. I just wanted to make sure you wouldn't worry about her getting involved again or telling anyone else. You know she thinks she loves you, right?" Jenny looked shocked. "Are you sure?" She admitted everything. She followed you from New York, played around with our issues, and tried to make you cheat on me. She wanted to keep us apart, hoping you would fall for her. She claims that when you were friends in New York, you hinted at having deeper feelings for her than just being friends. Jenny's angry look proved it to me. It doesn't matter if it's true, but that's how she saw it. If it had been a guy friend, you wouldn't trust him like you do her. You never realized how she felt about you. You were easily influenced by her. Looking back, I see that I never really liked her, and I regret saying anything at all. On Saturday morning, your behavior showed her that Friday didn't affect you in the way she wanted. She wanted to recreate that moment. She believed that if you had enough fun, you wouldn't want to return to your normal life. She knew all about the party. The women there had been told what might happen with the pills she got for you. Her best friend warned her that the pills were very strong and shouldn't be mixed with alcohol. That's when she got her idea. Megan thought that if you drank too much, she could reach you again, but she also knew you wouldn't let your guard down like you did before. She didn't share what the pills were, and she made sure you took some before you went to the party. After a few drinks, she noticed you were not yourself and started trying to get you to do something you normally wouldn't. She knew they were recording, so if you hadn't told me when you'd be back, she could have kept things from getting messy. She waited a bit after you got home, hoping you would calm down and talk to her again. When she saw that wasn't going to happen, she sent me an email. I'm not sure if it was because she still wanted something good to happen for you, or if she was just trying to get a reaction. I told her that it wasn't nice to treat someone you say you love like that, but I'm not sure if that would change anything for her. I took a deep breath and held Jenny's hands in mine. Look, I just wanted to make sure you wouldn't have to face this again. You remember what you said? That you would never see me the same way again? That wasn't true. I might not have managed it all perfectly, but I love you. I asked you to come back because I knew I couldn't feel that way about anyone else. Maybe I rushed it, trying to make everyone else happy. I never doubted that we would be okay again. It might take some time, but I will keep trying. You mean everything to me. We shared a warm hug and a gentle kiss, feeling her shake a little. I was happy to help lift some of the weight off her shoulders. Then I remembered I had one more surprise. I carefully stepped back. Jenny, I have something else for you. I took the last paper from the envelope and held it out to her. This should have been sorted out long ago. Her eyes filled with tears as she started to read the papers. I felt a sense of joy as the tears began to flow. She put the papers aside and jumped into my arms, holding me so tightly it was almost painful. She looked up at me. Are you sure? I smiled back, knowing this kind act would help lessen her fears and pain more than anything else I had done. It's official. You are now not just my wife, but also the mother of Danielle. There's no turning back. We need to make this work. She turned around and rested her back against my chest, gazing lovingly at the adoption papers from David's office. I gently stroked her hair as she read the papers. I stayed with her until she felt ready to move. After a while, she took the papers to another room and put them in a safe spot. When she came back, she took my hand and led me up the stairs without speaking. There was no need for words. 2 months later, Brian was busy in his office when the phone rang. Hello, Brian, it's John. Can I come in to see you for a minute? Sure, I'm free around 5. Can you come over then? I'll be there. As I walked into his office, I thought about how much had changed since my first visit. I had made peace with Jenny. I had grown to understand our lives better and how we were adjusting things. It was all thanks to Brian's gentle encouragement. We started going to his church and discovered many good things in our lives by helping others. Danielle loved going to church, and I enjoyed watching her learn about the things I grew up with. Everything felt almost perfect, but it often feels that way until something bad happens. Brian met me at the front door. John, it's great to see you. Your call seemed urgent. Is everything okay? No, it's not okay. Something bad happened yesterday, I replied. He showed me to his office, and I sat down on the couch I knew well. Things had not been easy for weeks. She was keeping her distance and finding lots of reasons to avoid me. I wanted to talk to her about it, but I didn't want to assume the worst. Then yesterday I came home early and heard her talking to her sister in the kitchen. I was about to walk in to say hi when I heard her say, "If he thinks I'm going to keep doing things my way, he's crazy." They were discussing many things. I didn't catch everything, but what I did hear was really upsetting. It was clear that she was getting ready for a big talk about how I've been doing things. He seemed worried. That's really sad. Did you speak to her about it? No, I was too upset. When I saw his disapproving look, I tried to explain my side. I couldn't just walk into the kitchen in front of her sister and start an argument. I drove away in my car, but when I returned, Nicole was gone. Danielle and Jenny were having dinner, so I missed my chance to talk. I just wasn't in the mood. I said I was tired and stayed there until she fell asleep. Afterward, I went to the living room and sat there for most of the night. Things have been so good between us for the last couple of months. I can't believe she's feeling this way. I really don't know what to do. Today she called me at work and said we need to talk. She said it's important and she wants it to be just the two of us. So, she's sending Danny to Nicole. She asked me to meet her at the hotel bar where we used to dance. I talked to Brian for a while, but we didn't really get anywhere. I didn't expect much from it. I just needed someone to listen before I met Jenny. It took me back to where all of this began. Sitting alone at the bar, I waited, worried it might be the end of my marriage. After everything I had been through and all the effort I put in, I couldn't believe it could end like this. Hearing some of the things she said to her sister made me wonder if she even wanted to keep working on our relationship. Even if she did, I had taken her back based on what we had agreed to, and it had only been 4 months. If she wanted me to drop everything, that was too much. It would take a lot more time to earn back her trust. If she can't see things clearly, I might have to end it. It's been 7 months since then, and lately, I've been thinking about that night all the time. It showed me that things were still not okay between Jenny and me. It was better than any lectures from Williams, Brian, or my other friends. I think I made some bad choices about both Jenny and myself right from the start. My friend noticed some of my mistakes and tried to gently guide me. I'm lucky to have people who care about me enough to point things out, even if I don't always want to hear it. As I walked down the hallway to meet my friends, I didn't have time to think about it. However, looking back at that class and what I learned, it feels familiar. I saw Jenny walk through the door and I noticed how everyone stopped to look at her. She looked stunning and confident as she moved through the crowd. I felt a knot in my stomach, worried that things might go wrong again. She came up to me and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. She had a serious look on her face and suggested we sit in a booth in the corner. Once we were settled, the waitress came over and asked if we wanted anything. I offered to buy her a drink, but she just wanted water. I decided to order myself another shirt instead. I wanted something to help ease my feelings. After the waitress walked away, Jenny spoke. "John, I'm sorry. I've been acting strange lately. Something has happened that could change our friendship." I was too nervous to listen, so I cut her off. "I know what's happening. I heard you and Nicole talking." She stared at me in shock. She looked let down. "I don't know why this is happening," I continued, "but I won't just accept it. If you think you can make me change how I feel by making threats, you're wrong. I care about you, but I won't let you walk all over me." "Really?" Jenny asked, looking at me like she wanted to laugh. I didn't see what was funny about this. Then Jenny frowned at me. "So you were listening in? What happened to our promise to talk about everything and never go to bed upset?" She must have noticed how troubled I was. Suddenly, her face changed to a softer look. "After all, I can't have the father of my child not believing in me." I was shocked for a moment, lost in my thoughts. I couldn't believe what I just heard. "You said Jenny could no longer hide her smile." "Yes, it's true. You're going to be a father again. I'm pregnant and I was just feeling a huge relief that I was so wrong about how this night would go." I leaned over the table and kissed her face. It felt a bit awkward, and I noticed I was pulling her too close to the table. I quickly stood up and pulled her out of the booth to give her a big hug while I tried to understand this big change in our lives. We hugged tightly for a long time without saying a word. Finally, I found the courage to ask, "When did you find out?" Jen raised her hand to touch my cheek like she often did. I always wondered if she liked that gesture because it was her favorite, or because she knew I liked it. Just today, the doctor mentioned he thinks it happened the day you surprised me with the adoption papers. I will never forget how special that moment was. I am so happy our baby came from that moment. I didn't know what else to say. So many thoughts crowded my mind that I felt overwhelmed. Finally, I was able to think clearly. I realized that unlike my past with Danielle's mother, I felt excited the moment you told me. I couldn't believe how different this feeling was from when Katie had told me similar news. However, I still wanted to talk more about it. "I can't believe you did that to me. You really frightened me." She smiled and said, "You shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. Why didn't you just ask me what was going on?" I felt so embarrassed and must have looked silly. Everything happened so quickly, I didn't have time to think. "What did you say yesterday? You said you weren't going to let me control your life anymore." "No, I said I wouldn't let him control my life. My boss was angry because I had taken a lot of time off work recently. He warned me that if anything else happened, he might have to let me go. I felt that was a big deal, and I wasn't going to force myself to go to work when I felt so poorly just to please him. Haven't you seen how sick I've been for the last few weeks? At that moment, I realized I had really misunderstood everything. Yeah, but I thought it was because you had been staying away from me. Jenny couldn't help but laugh. You thought I would make myself sick to stay away from you? She seemed to notice my discomfort and finally stopped teasing me. I thought something might be wrong, so I decided to take a test. It came back positive, but I wanted to talk to a doctor before telling you. I thought I might go a little crazy if I waited until today to find out. So I decided to share it with Nicole first. I was just chatting with her when you decided to play detective. I know I should have told you right away, but I wanted to save you from more bad news. I hope to give you good news instead. Will you forgive me? Now it was my turn to smile. I wake up every morning thinking I have to find a reason to forgive you anyway. So I'll just add this to the list. She tried to look upset but couldn't, and playfully slapped my arm. Just remember our list of rules, mister. When I get bigger and grumpy, I expect you to take good care of me. With pleasure, my lady, I said with a playful bow. A voice came from behind me. Can we join the fun now? Turning around, I was surprised to see Steve and Sharon. Sharon came over and gave me a big hug that felt tight. I hadn't noticed how strong she was. She kissed my cheek and said, "I'm so happy for you." Steve was waiting nearby, looking a bit restless while she talked to Jenny. He shook my hand and gave me a quick hug. Just so you know, Jenny asked us to come. I turned back to my wife, who seemed a bit sad. I called them after I spoke with you. I didn't think you would mind, and I wanted them to be here with us. Without their support, I'm not sure if you would have given me another chance. I realized how deeply she felt about everything that had happened and how close we were to not fixing things. I didn't want anything to spoil this happy moment, so I put my arm around her shoulders to comfort her. She smiled again. Steve told me he had to really push you to call Brian. I smiled, remembering how I didn't want to face the truth back then. That's right, I said. Steve nodded, looking proud. I take full credit for helping you two get things sorted out. As a reward for my endless patience, I get to be the godfather to my namesake. Your namesake? I chuckled. I'm sorry, but there's no way I will call my child a jerk. I had to dodge quickly to avoid a punch. About an hour later, we finally said goodnight to our two friends. Jenny took me to the room she had booked earlier. Even though she was excited, she still looked a bit worried. John, please tell me this is what you want. I know we still have a lot to fix between us, but I'm really excited about this. It's very important to me that you are happy too. I didn't think twice. That's wonderful news. I wish we didn't have other issues, but I'm really happy. I can't wait to tell Danny she's going to be a big sister. She will be so thrilled. Thinking back on these memories made me feel blessed. Jenny had a smooth pregnancy, and I am so thankful for that. I enjoyed every moment I spent with her. Things were so different with Katie, and I was thankful for another chance to share this experience. Danny was a real gem. She often read to Jenny, making sure to give her a kiss on the belly so that the baby would feel her love. Trying to push those memories away, I walked through the doors into the waiting area. There, I saw our friends and all of Jenny's family waiting eagerly. I felt torn between wanting to make a joke and wanting to yell with happiness. In the end, I decided on a quiet cheer. "It's a boy," I said, trying hard not to shout. Once the celebration calmed down a bit, I finally got to enjoy the moment I had been waiting for all these months. Danny, do you want to go meet your little brother? Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.